Chapter 272. Neigh. Accompanied by a loud neigh, a handsome white horse descended from the sky with the sun on its back. Boom! That night, the entire Yuanzhong mountain disappeared. House of Einstein Barons. Sela was sitting at the dining table, eating in small bites, while the TV was playing the news. Because a meteorite suddenly fell on Yuanzhong Mountain last night, it caused the natural trachea buried in Yuanzhong Mountain to explode. It's terrible, a meteorite suddenly fell to the ground. And is there natural gas in Yuanzhong Mountain? Sela thought. By the way, when did I fall asleep last night? I don't remember. Well, isn't this good? Sela must be so tired that she doesn't even know when she fell asleep. Alice Field sat next to Sela, eating and looking at Sela with a smile. Is that so? Yes. Sela was too tired. She accidentally fell asleep. She should go to bed early in the future, Lizette complained. You're the one who often falls asleep, Sela said helplessly. Mama, Alice Field smiled, even more happily. By the way, do you really not need to call Ilya and the others? They had too much fun last night. Let them have a good sleep, Shawayu residents. Mayu was sleeping in the room, while Wu Ming and Bizette were enjoying breakfast. Speaking of which, Master made quite a ruckus last night. Suddenly, Bizette opened his mouth. Last night, Wu Ming directly used double authority and added a lot of his aura to summon the white horse, which directly melted Yuanzhong Mountain, including the great holy grail at the bottom of Yuanzhong Mountain and the black mud that formed the giant. Wu Ming's move directly burned the black mud. After using double authority, Wu Ming came to Mayu and the others in time to protect them. Wu Ming still remembered how miserably Ilya, Mayu, and Little Black had cried back then. Wu Ming comforted them for a while before they stopped crying. According to Xiao He, this was the price Wu Ming had to pay for deceiving them. This made Wu Ming smile bitterly. Moreover, Wu Ming also promised to take the three of them to the amusement park as compensation. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, Wu Ming shook his head and came back to his senses. I don't want to either, but if we continue to let him do as he pleases, who knows what will happen. Then, a golden ripple appeared behind Wu Ming, and a young figure bound by Enkidu fell out. Plop! Ouch, teacher. Can't you be gentler? I'm your favorite disciple. A childish voice entered Wu Ming's ears. Wu Ming looked at the figure. He had a small body, short golden hair, red eyes, and a naked body. If it wasn't for Enkidu covering his 3 points, Wu Ming definitely wouldn't have let him out. You still have the nerve to say that. You're clearly the hero king, yet you were corroded by a mere black mud. You should be thankful that I didn't send you back to the martyr's palace. Wumlis gave the figure a ruthless slap. That's right, that was the young hero king, and it was not the female version that Wu Ming knew. The hero king in this world was the male version. You can't blame me for this, teacher. The black mud has your breath, so I treated it as an ally. Young Gil looked at Wu Ming with a smile. It seemed like Wu Ming used a lot of force, but Wu Ming didn't use much force. He only gently knocked on young Gil's head. Young Gil naturally knew that Wu Ming wasn't this world's Hyunryong. However, due to the suppression, when Wu Ming came to a parallel world, the identity of that world Wu Ming would be attached to Wu Ming. If one had to say something, it would be that the suppression left a seat for Wu Ming in every parallel world. As long as he came, that seat would be taken by Wu Ming, and Wu Ming would leave his mark in history. Young Gil knew Wu Ming because of this. Although Wu Ming had never seen the male version of young Gil, the female version of Gilgamesh that Wu Ming knew was almost exactly the same as the male version of young Gil. Even their temperaments and personalities were the same. Seriously, put on your clothes and come over for dinner. Wu Ming rubbed his forehead helplessly. Then, he took out a set of Uruk clothes from his relic and threw it to young Gil. The moment before the clothes touched young Gil, the heaven lock, Enkidu, was completely retracted by Wu Ming. Young Gil didn't care about Bizette's presence. He quickly put on his clothes and sat next to Wu Ming. I didn't expect you to save Enkidu in another world, Sensei. Young Gil said with a smile. Although Wu Ming's Enkidu had changed a lot, as a close friend, young Gil could still recognize Enkidu. When Enkidu bound young Gil, Enkidu and young Gil communicated. Even if they were close friends in a parallel world, that wouldn't change. Naturally, the two of them had a happy conversation. It's not considered saving. At that time, I escaped from the Uruk with my tail between my legs, Wuming said casually. Ha ha, that's because Sensei was restricted by the era. If you released your body, those gods would have surrendered to you a long time ago. Young Gil laughed as if he had heard a happy story. The gods all live in a higher dimension. In other words, they are already dead, Wuming said to young Gil as he drank a mouthful of porridge. Even if they died 10,000 times, it wouldn't be enough, Sensei, young Gil said with a smile. The reason young Gil said this was naturally because of Enkidu. Enkidu, who was saved by Wuming, stimulated young Gil and reminded him of the dead Enkidu of this world. Children shouldn't always talk about death. Wuming flicked young Gil's forehead. Sigh. Sensei is so nice to children. I thought Sensei had become a lolicon. Young Gil patted his chest and sighed in relief. Your personality is still so bad. I really don't know what you learned from me. Wuming was a little speechless. I am the ancient king, the hero king Gilgamesh. What I learned from Sensei is naturally the basic principles of being a king. Don't pour dirty water on me. I don't remember teaching you to have a bad personality. Wuming refuted young Gil's words with a little disdain. Sigh, why are you like this, Sensei? After I went to the West, I also had a disciple there. She was much better than you. Wuming was talking about Artoria. Oh, someone who could be accepted as a disciple by Sensei. Then I have to get to know her. Young Gil's eyes were full of interesting charm. Bang! Wuming gave young Gil another flick. Well, this time it was a hard flick. Sensei, it hurts. Chapter 273. Wuming continued to eat as if nothing had happened. You've obviously become smaller, but you're still so uncute, just like the grown-up you. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I also hate the grown-up me. Wouldn't it be better to be gentler? Although young Gil said so, Wuming knew that whether it was young Gil or the grown-up Gilgamesh, their personalities were the same. It was just that young Gil was the two-faced type. He looked good, but in fact, he was full of evil interests. Now that I've destroyed the tactics of the Great Holy Grail, do you still want to pursue the Great Holy Grail? Wuming asked without turning his head. Young Gil took a bite of Wuming's food and showed an expression of enjoyment. Since the small Holy Grail is teachers, then I can only give it up. Young Gil smiled. That's suspicious. Wuming stared at young Gil and said suspiciously, You appeared in the young version and not the grown-up version because someone used your other class card, right? Wuming suddenly said, Well, as expected of teacher. That's right. Now, most of my noble artifacts are on the other side. Young Gil smiled helplessly. Because Angelica used the Archer card of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh's other card, which was the current young Gil, could be considered as an incomplete version. That's good. I'm preparing to attack the side with your card. Do you want to make up the numbers? Wuming's mouth curved into a smile. Hey, since teacher has personally appeared, do you still need me? Young Gil had a leisurely look on his face as he ate. Well, that's true. Since that's the case, you can stay here and look after the house. Wuming smiled. Also don't bully Beauty. Wuming smiled and said word by word. Yes, teacher. Young Gil smiled awkwardly. After dinner, Wuming asked young Gil to wash the dishes. It had to be said that although the young Gil and the adult Gilgamesh had the same personality, the young Gil was able to control his temper more easily. When Wuming said to wash the dishes, he eagerly went to do it. As for Bizet, he was sent out by Wuming to buy ingredients. Wuming held the omelet rice that he had specially left for Mayu. Moreover, it was Wuming who had specially processed it with his magic to keep it warm. Then, Wuming knocked on Mayu's door. Mayu, are you awake? Wuming asked softly. However, there was no sound coming out from the room. Don't tell me she's still sleeping. Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then, he opened Mayu's door. When he opened the door, as expected, Mayu was lying on her small bed. Because it was summer, Mayu's body was only covered with a thin layer of blanket. Wuming put the omelet rice on the table beside Mayu's bed then gently sat on Meiyo's bed. Meiyu is really cute. Wuming laid in front of Meiyu and carefully looked at Meiyo's sleeping face. These few years, I feel like I'm raising a daughter. I really miss it. Fortunately, Meiyo's nature was not very active. She was a quiet Meiyu, lowly. Moreover, Meiyu was very sensible. This made Wuming feel very relaxed and happy about raising a daughter. As if she sensed that there was someone around her, Meiyu, who was sleeping soundly, moved and slowly opened her eyes. This is Brother Wuming. However, Meiyu seemed to be in a daze. She looked at Wuming in a daze. It seems that yesterday was really tiring for you. This is the first time I've seen Meiyu in such a daze. Wuming said with some heartache. After all, last night, Meiyu was not only worried about Wuming's life, but also had to stop a powerful and terrifying enemy. Her body and mind were always tense. It was understandable that she slept like this. Brother Wuming, Meiyu said in a daze. What's wrong, Meiyu? Wuming said in an exceptionally gentle tone. He could not wake up a person who was in a daze instantly. This would cause some damage to her mental state. It was better to wake her up slowly and gently. Ilya said, everything in the dream is not real. Then, Brother Wuming. Wuming looked at Meiyu in confusion. What does Meiyu want to do with me? Wuming moved closer to Meiyu's ear and asked again. Wuming really did not hear the last sentence that Meiyu said. Kiss, kiss, as she said this. Meiyu reached out and grabbed Wuming's neck. She instantly raised her head and kissed Wuming. Wuming widened his eyes. He really did not expect that Meiyu, who usually looked especially quiet, would be so daring at this moment. Could it be that she was the same as usual, but became extreme in her sleep because of the suppression of her daily life? Also, what did Ilya tell Meiyu? Fortunately, even if Meiyu became extreme, she was still Meiyu. Wuming only touched her slightly. After touching Wuming's lips lightly, Meiyu let go of Wuming. At this moment, Meiyu, who was in a daze from her sleep, was almost awake. Meiyu came back to her senses. She looked at Brother Wuming's face that was incomparably real. She recalled what she had done just now. Meiyu was stunned. I prepared some food for you. Hurry up and eat, Wuming said gently. Wuming did not stop because of Meiyu's shallow kiss just now. Wuming adjusted himself and instantly recovered from his shock. It's just a kiss from a sister to a brother. It's no big deal. Wuming began to self-hypnotize himself. However, Meiyu was unable to let go of what had just happened. Woo, woo woo, Wuming, brother. Meiyu's entire head was as red as a monkey's butt. She stared blankly at Wuming and stuttered. Wuming looked at Meiyu, who was unable to look at his eyes due to her shyness. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he smiled. Hurry up and eat. I can feed you today. Wuming touched Meiyu's scalding hot little head and said gently. If one did not know the inside story, Meiyu's scalding hot little head might be mistaken as having a fever. Look, I made your favorite omelet rice for you, Wuming said as he picked up the bowl of omelet rice on the table beside Meiyu's bed. Meiyu was indeed a genius girl. After seeing that Wuming did not panic from the previous kiss, she calmed down a little. Do you need me to feed you? This is a rare opportunity, Wuming asked again. Okay. Meiyu's little head nodded. Wuming held the bowl of omelet rice in one hand and the spoon in the other hand. He gently scooped up a spoonful of omelet rice and sent it to Meiyu's mouth. Wuming said. Meiyu opened her little mouth and sucked on the spoon. How is it? Wuming asked with a smile. Meiyu tasted it carefully. It's delicious as always, Brother Wuming. Meiyu still did not dare to look at Wuming. Her cheeks were slightly red as she said. Then let's continue. Okay. Chapter 274. Then, I'll go out first. Also, Meiyu's sleeping posture is very cute. Wuming finished speaking and left Meiyu's room with an empty tray. Meiyu lowered her head deeply, her cheeks red. Ruby, when did Brother Wuming come in? Meiyu said shyly. Sapphire flew out from Meiyu's hair and spoke while floating. Lord Wuming came in for about a few minutes. Because he sat beside you to observe Lord Meiyu's sleeping posture, he woke Lord Meiyu up. Then, Lord Meiyu kissed Mayu instantly grabbed Sapphire and covered her mouth. It was Sapphire's hexagram. Probably. Lord Mayu. It was obvious that Mayu didn't cover Sapphire's mouth. Sapphire asked curiously, I don't think that Lord Mayu is a pervert who kisses her brother. After all, you aren't blood-related siblings. Theoretically, you can... Don't say any more, Sapphire. Mayu blushed and shook Sapphire continuously. I understand, Lord Mayu. Then, Mayu let go of Sapphire. Mayu thought about everything she did with Wuming and the words she said to Wuming. She shook her head in confusion. The reason why Mayu said that, since it's a dream, then everything isn't real, was because Mayu had almost been forcefully kissed by Ilya. After that incident, Ilya told Mayu that everything in the dream was fake. Children at this age like to dream, so it shouldn't be taken seriously. Ilya's goal was to let Mayu understand that her actions back then weren't because she liked Wuming. However, the extremely smart Mayu naturally knew that Ilya liked her brother. In the end, Mayu misunderstood that Ilya meant that they could do anything in the dream. In the end, the aforementioned morning kiss happened. Whoa! After thinking about it carefully, Mayu covered her face in shame and started sobbing. Wuming left Mayu's room and went to the kitchen. When Wuming came in, young Gil, who was washing the dishes, raised his hand to greet him. Yo, teacher, you're finally out. Young Gil finished washing the last dish and looked at Wuming. Wuming placed the plate beside young Gil's dish. I'll leave this to you two. You're feeding me personally, aren't you? That's nice. Even teacher hasn't fed me before. Young Gil obediently started washing the dishes again. That's because you're a man. Wuming waved his hand. Back then, he had fed the lowly Gil quite a lot. However, as they grew older, the lowly Gil became the cold and domineering big sister Gil. Therefore, Wuming's feeding privilege was revoked. Sigh, and you said that you don't like lowly. Teacher, seriously. Wuming narrowed his eyes. He could only say that he was indeed the male version of Gilgamesh. He was even more mischievous than the female version. You'd better be prepared. I'll introduce you to my friends later. Remember, don't cause trouble for me and don't talk nonsense. Yes, teacher, young Gil replied with a smile. I hope so. Wuming left the Shuayu residence. Before he left, Wuming handed a game to young Gil. This is a modified version of Grand Strategy that I've specially modified with magic power. Clear it before I come back, Wuming said. After all, he had to find something for young Gil to do. Otherwise, with his mischievous taste, it was inevitable that he would cause some trouble. Wuming arrived at the house of Einstein Barons and parked the car at the door. Wuming entered Ilya's house. Wuming walked to the door. Just as Wuming was about to knock on the door opened by itself. Ah, isn't that Mr. and Mrs. Xiao? Ah, isn't this Mr. Wuming? Are you here to look for Ilya and Blackie? They're still sleeping. It's so rare that the two of them are sleeping together. I've been looking at their sleeping faces for a long time. Mr. Wuming, you should go and take a look. Alice Phil was just about to go out and bumped into Wuming when she opened the door. What a coincidence, madam. Are you going out? Wuming said gracefully. Yes. After all, the meteorite last night caused a natural gas pipeline to explode, and Yuanzhong Mountain was blown away. I have to check it out. Looking at the smiling Alice Phil, Wuming felt awkward. The news report about the meteorite causing the natural gas pipeline to explode and collapse was naturally made up by Wuming and the others to cover up the ordinary people. However, Wuming didn't know that the disappearance of Yuanzhong Mountain was actually explained as the meteorite causing the natural gas pipeline to collapse. Last night, Wuming handed this matter over to Rin Enbin, Luia, and the others. Then, he left with Ilya and the others. After all, the disappearance of Yuanzhong Mountain would definitely be discovered by the citizens. They had to deal with it as soon as possible. The result was, they're really unreliable. Wuming complained his heart. About that, I'll take care of it in the near future. Wuming touched his head awkwardly. Allah, that's great. Then, I'll take my leave first, Mr. Wuming. After saying that, Alice Phil left the Arinsbella mansion. Hadash. Wuming let out a long sigh of relief and then walked into the house. After greeting Sela, Wuming went directly to Ilya's room. According to Sela, Ilya and Little Black slept together last night, so Wooming only needed to go directly to Ilya's room. Ilya, Little Black, are you awake? Wooming knocked on the door and asked. After waiting for a few seconds, Wooming determined that the two were still asleep. I'm coming in. With that, Wooming pushed open the door to Ilya's room. What entered Wooming's eyes was Little Black and Ilya's intertwined sleeping posture. Seriously, both of them. Why are their sleeping postures so improper? Wooming shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Wooming walked to the side of the bed, bent down, and shook Ilya and Little Black. Ilya, Little Black, it's time to wake up. I have something to tell you. Wake up. Following Wooming's shaking in voice, Ilya and Little Black opened their eyes in a daze. Hey, it's Big Brother. Good morning, kiss. Ilya smiled in a daze and reached out to hug Wooming. Again, Wooming, who had experienced it before, naturally did not fall for it this time. However, this was not the main point, but Ilya hugged Little Black and kissed Little Black's lips. Big Brother, Ilya said as she kissed. Wooming silently cast a soundproof barrier, just in case at this moment, Ilya just woke up. Ilya was silent and looked at Little Black in a daze. Then, she looked at Wooming, who was standing at the side. Wooming was also silent and did not say a word as he looked at the ceiling. Ilya's screams caused Wooming to helplessly cover his ears. As expected, I'm the genius who set up this soundproof barrier. Chapter 275. All right then, I'll leave with Ilya and Little Black first. Wooming held Ilya and Little Black's hands and stood at the door to bid farewell to Sela. However, Little Black seemed to be holding back her laughter, while Ilya lowered her head with a blushing face. Yes, take care, Sela smiled and waved goodbye. After walking out of the door, Little Black began to laugh. Hee, Ilya is so cute. Little Black looked at Ilya playfully. Woo. Ilya felt even more ashamed. Even though Ilya's scream didn't reach Sela's ears, it woke up Little Black, who was still sleeping. Looking at Ilya's flushed and bewildered expression, looking at the astonished Wooming, feeling the moisture on her lips, and combining it with Ilya's scream, Little Black instantly understood everything. Come to think of it, I'm a victim. Why are you so shy when I haven't even said anything? Little Black looked at Ilya helplessly and held her forehead. But, Ilya lowered her head even more. Isn't it because you wanted to have a morning kiss with Big Brother and ended up kissing me instead? Or is Ilya regretting that she didn't kiss Big Brother? At that moment, Little Black became mischievous again. You're talking nonsense. I didn't. However, Ilya's blushing and stuttering rebuttal didn't seem to be valid. All right, that's enough. Little Black, let Ilya off. With soundless pleading on Ilya's behalf, Blacking naturally nodded. By the way, why did Big Brother look for us today? Little Black asked the key question. At the same time, Ilya also looked at Wooming. Of course, it's about the 9th class card. After Wooming said that, the two of them became particularly serious. After all, the servant transformed from the 9th class card was rather terrifying. Show all you residents. A dark spatial door appeared out of thin air. Wooming walked out with Little Black and Ilya. We're here. Wooming let go of the hand that was held by Wooming out of fear. It had to be said that this teleportation gate spell was indeed a little scary, but it couldn't be helped. After all, it was a spell designed for darkness-type monsters. Ilya? Little Black? Mayo's voice came from the side. Mayu was sitting on the sofa in the living room, doing her summer homework. Mayu! Ilya shouted excitedly, and then ran to Mayo's side. Little Hay also walked over. After seeing Mayu doing her summer homework, Little Hay didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I really don't know if I should say that Mayu is a natural or a careless person. She just went through such a horrible experience, but the next day, she started doing her summer homework as if nothing had happened. Wooming smiled helplessly. Mayo's personality was like that. Basically, she wouldn't be emotionally unstable because of anything. And the only time she had emotional lines was when Wooming's life was uncertain. But at that time, Mayu still insisted on doing what she was going to do next and didn't lose her fighting spirit completely because of emotional lines. Gotta say, Mayu had an extremely calm mentality that even adults didn't have. But no matter what, Mayu was only a primary school student. After Wuming appeared from the mirror world, Mayu choked up and couldn't speak. This was clearly proven, because if I don't do a little every day, I will have to work hard to make up for it in the future, Mayu answered in a serious manner. As expected of Mayu. That's Mayu's style of answering. Ilya and Little Black smiled awkwardly. It's about time, Wuming suddenly said. Question mark. Ilya and the others looked at Wuming in confusion. Master, I brought Rin in Osaka and Livia, Serena Edelfelt here. At that moment, Bazette's voice sounded from outside the door. Shortly after, Bazette pushed the door open and entered, followed by Livia's black twin ponytails and blonde wavy hair. When Wuming got Bazette to buy ingredients, he also got him to bring Rin in Osaka and Livia over. In the end, the natural Bazette tied up Rin in Osaka and Livia and brought them over. Everyone arrived at a small conference room and sat on 2 rows of sofas in the conference room. Seriously, we would have come back if you just let us know. Is there a need to do this? Rin in Osaka stroked her twin ponytails in displeasure. That's right. You're really not ladylike at all, and you don't respect ladylike women at all. You actually tied me up with Rin in Osaka. Livia stroked her blonde, wavy hair. What do you mean by that? Do you think I still like being tied up with you? Rin in Osaka glared at Livia fiercely. Oh, what a pitiful attitude, Rin in Osaka. Livia mocked back. Ahem, Wuming, who was sitting at the head of the table, coughed twice and then glared at Bazette. Bazette's body immediately tensed up like a mouse that saw a cat. She knew that she did something wrong again. Probably. Wuming, who was sitting at the head of the table, stopped glaring at Bazette and began to speak. First, let's talk about the 9th grade card. Everyone had a serious look on their faces. After all, the blackened servant yesterday was an existence that fooled Wuming, and in the end, Wuming had to use Sun to eliminate the blackened servant. The blackened servant yesterday is my disciple, Hero King Gilgamesh, Brother Wuming's disciple. Ilya, Xiaohei, and Mayu were surprised. Sure enough, Rin in Osaka and Livia said secretly. Yesterday, the blackened Gilgamesh used countless noble phantoms to bombard Rin in Osaka and the others. Not only did he have a noble phantasm that could cut through space, but he also had an airship that could fly and release ancient nuclear bombs. After Rin in Osaka and Livia's investigation, they almost locked onto the ancient king, Hero King Gilgamesh. The airship yesterday was Vimona, am I right? Bazette said. Wuming nodded. But that Hero King was defeated by Big Brother, right? Ilya meant that there was no need to talk about the defeated enemy. No, actually, when I defeated him, I also destroyed the Great Holy Grail technique in Yuzhou Mountain. As a result, the two of them had some connection. With that said, Wuming snapped his fingers, and a golden ripple appeared beside him. Clatter! Young Gilgamesh fell to the ground with the sound of chains. Hello, everyone. I'm Master's favorite disciple, Gilgamesh. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Chapter 276. Young Gil's body was wrapped in chains, but even so, he still greeted everyone. This child is Big Brother's disciple, the oldest king. Ilya said in disbelief. It's the real deal. I'm the oldest king, the hero king, Gilgamesh. Looking at young Gil's sweet smile, Ilya was dumbfounded. But why is the legendary oldest king a child? Blackie voiced out the doubts in Ilya's heart. This is probably how the hero king, Gilgamesh, looked like when he was young. As expected of a first-rate magician from the clock tower, Rin Inbin instantly thought of this possibility. Rin is right. Because most of Gil's power is in another card, the current hero king, Gilgamesh, is also a weakened version of a child, Wuming explained. Wait, another card? Livia repeated what she heard from Wuming. Yes, that's right. This is also the topic of this meeting that I called everyone here. Then, Wuming told everyone that he and Mayu came from another world, which was the parallel world. Because of the house of Einstein barons of the other world, Ainsworth's persecution of Mayu, Wuming fought with him and was tricked in the end. Shiro Amiya of the other world used the Holy Grail to make a wish and sent Mayu to this world. He also came to this world because he was pulled by the Holy Grail when he disappeared. He told everyone a series of things. Big brother from the other world, Ilya said slowly. The house of Einstein barons of the parallel world, Ainsworth, Blackie said with a serious expression. The Holy Grail War of the cards? I see, Bazette said thoughtfully. No wonder you know so much about the class cards. Rin Enbin looked at Wuming and Mayu with a look of relief. So why are you telling us all this? Livia asked. Isn't this what you've always wanted to know? Wuming smiled. I'm sorry, Ilya Little Black. Mayu looked at Ilya and Little Black apologetically. How could that be, Mayu? After all, everyone has things that they don't want to talk about. It's not your fault. Ilya held Mayu's hand and smiled at Mayu. It wasn't easy for Ilya to say something reliable, but she's right. Mayu, if you want to blame someone, blame Big Brother. It's Big Brother's fault for hiding it from us, Little Black said mischievously. No, you can't blame Brother Wuming. I'm also responsible for everything here. Mayu shook her head in a slight panic. This made Wuming laugh. You guys, I'll buy ice cream for you guys later as an apology. How about that? Really? I want strawberry-flavored ice cream, and it's a double-layer ice cream. Ilya looked excited. Seriously, a mere Ilya was bought over by ice cream. Little Black looked at Ilya with disdain. Hee. Ilya didn't refute. She scratched her head awkwardly. If it's me, I want 4 layers of double-flavored ice cream, Little Black said proudly. Little Black, you're still talking about me. Aren't you also bought over? Ilya's little face puffed up like a little bun as she stared at Little Black. I think, Wuming, you must have other things, Livia said after thinking for a while. Wuming smiled slightly. You're right. I'm preparing to attack Ainsworth, and I want you guys to help me take care of Mayu. What? When Wuming said this, everyone shouted in surprise. Among them, Mayu had the most intense reaction. Why? I want to go back with Brother Wuming, Mayu said with a slightly anxious tone. That's not a good choice, Wuming. Rin Enbin crossed his legs. You said it yourself. Because you were defeated by Ainsworth with the help of the parallel worlds. Amiya, Kuin, Mayu was sent to this world. If you go back, wouldn't you be walking right into a trap? Ilya and Little Black nodded frantically. Unfortunately, even if I don't go back, Ainsworth has the ability to find this place. Since that's the case, I might as well act first and gain the upper hand, Wuming explained. Then, Livia arrogantly pointed at herself. If that's the case, you'll need someone else's help. Coincidentally, Livia Serena Eiderfeld, happen to be a good ally. I'm quite free these days. Also, don't forget, you promised to help me analyze class cards. If you don't know how to do it, who's going to help me analyze class cards? Rin Enbin followed Livia's words and said. When Livia heard this, her expression changed. Damn you, Rin Enbin, you actually secretly asked Wuming to help analyze class cards behind my back. Livia stared at Rin Enbin, and Rin Enbin didn't back down and stare back at Livia. I'm hiding it from you. What can you do about it? Their eyes were filled with the flames of battle. Since they can find us, I think it's better to act first and gain the upper hand according to Big Brother's words. Although I'm not that strong, I'll still help with Mayu and Big Brother's matter. Ilya clenched her fists and encouraged herself. My heart is the Archer class card. Since I'm already involved in this matter, of course I have to help Big Brother solve this matter. Little Black then jumped into Wuming's arms and hugged Wuming's neck affectionately. Moreover, the magic power essence that Big Brother gave me is now flowing well in my body. I have to repay you well. You, what are you doing? Little Black, get down from me. Ilya's face instantly turned red, and she quickly ran over to pull Little Black away from Wuming's arms. This matter has nothing to do with me, but the other party has all the secrets of the class cards. As the designated executor of the seal, I have to take it back. Bazit had a serious expression. However, Wuming looked at Bazit with a teasing expression. Cough, after all. I still owe you a debt, master. Bazzet's face turned red. It had to be said that although Bazette was a bit silly as a magician, he still had a bit of humanity. Of course, it was only a bit. Everyone. Mayu looked at everyone in the room with tears in her eyes. As if in tacit agreement, Rin and Osaka and Livia, who were glaring at each other, Ilya and Blackie, who were tugging at each other, and Bazet, who had been sitting there without moving, all looked at Wuming in unison. Wuming closed his eyes and said helplessly, "It's really troublesome. I understand, then I'll leave it to everyone." Oh, it's good to be united. Don't you think so, little blue? Ruby floated on the side and said while watching the scene. Sister finally said something reliable. "I'll reluctantly accept you today." Sapphire said calmly. Little blue, why are you like this? I'm so sad. Please don't do this again, sister. Finally, young Gil, who had been tied up by Enkidu, looked at Wuming with a smile. Sensei, it seems that you're becoming more and more human. Chapter 277. Then, everyone freeloaded a meal at Wuming's house. A few days later, Ilya and Blackie used the excuse of going camping with Wuming to apply for leave from home and left the Arinsbella mansion. When everyone was ready at the Shuo Suki mansion, Wuming wasn't in a hurry to activate the parallel world technique. As for whether Wuming could travel through parallel worlds, it was naturally a piece of cake for Wuming, who could travel through parallel worlds on his own. Because he needed to locate the parallel world where Ainsworth was, Wuming spent a few days. This was also why Ilya and the others only applied for leave a few days later. Seriously, what do you mean by eating the last dinner in this world? You make it sound like we're dead for sure. Rin and Osaka ate the dinner Wuming prepared and complained at the table. Well, after all, I haven't finished locating that parallel world. Bringing the entire Shuo Suki mansion through parallel worlds isn't an ordinary job, Wuming said. Well, big sister Rin, please understand big brother. Ilya smiled, but her smile was a little puzzled. By the way, why did big brother bring his mansion through with him? Isn't that too strange? Blackie asked the question that Ilya didn't ask. Bazette, Livia, and Rin and Osaka also looked at Wuming, indicating that they also wanted to know. Then, Wuming smiled but didn't say anything. It's like this. The Shuo Suki mansion that Brother Wuming built is actually Brother Wuming's magic workshop, Mayu said. Although Wuming didn't tell Mayu about the workshop's control room Wuming, Mayu vaguely knew about it, but Mayu didn't ask. As for the other places in the Shuo Yu residence, when Wuming had found Mayu and brought her to the Shuo Yu residence, Wuming had told Mayu everything. Mayu could be said to be Wuming's most beloved person. It was true that Wuming had been to many places and met many people, but Wuming really regarded Mayu as his closest relative. The other was an origin dragon that had no parents and only had the great origin as its ultimate goal. One was a pure holy grail from birth. Mayu was born with a mechanism that allowed her to fulfill her wishes based on the influence of her surroundings. Before meeting Wuming, she had only met her mother. Before meeting Wuming, she had not received any general education. It was only after meeting Wuming that she began to grow as a person. Julian once said that rather than saying that Mayu had the nature of the Holy Grail, it was better to say that the Holy Grail had awakened a human personality. Mayu is such an existence. It could be said that before the age of 5, which was before all of Mayu's relatives died, Mayu could barely remember anything. At that time, Mayu only remembered her mother. Now, due to the nature of the Holy Grail, Mayu had forgotten about her mother. After all, for the Mayu at that time, her mother was the only person she depended on. In addition, at the beginning, Shiro Amiya used Wuming and Mayu as tools because of Amiya Kiritsugu's will. Therefore, Mayu's closest relative could only be Wuming. Fortunately, Shiro Amiya was later enlightened by Wuming's words and began to treat Wuming and Mayu as a real brother and sister. Mayu also didn't ignore Shiro Amiya and had already regarded Shiro Amiya as a brother. However, compared to Wuming, this brother's weight was still not enough. Magic workshop? Having said that, Wuming's profession is caster, magician, right? It seems that this makes sense. Rin Hasaka was surprised at first, then said after thinking about it, "By the way, what does magic workshop mean?" Ilya raised her small hand and smiled a little shyly. "Really, Ilya, you can be regarded as a person who has stepped into the world of magicians. How can you not know the essential knowledge of magicians?" Xiao He touched his forehead helplessly, then began to explain. The so-called magic workshop refers to the position set up by the magicians themselves. In a magic workshop, the magician's magic will be greatly enhanced. Not only can they monitor the enemies in the magic workshop in real time, but they can also set up traps, weapons, and the like against the enemy in the magic workshop. In short, it is a very powerful magic fortress. Don't fight with magicians in their magic workshop. This is common sense in the world of magicians. Livia said, "Do you still remember the caster magician class card that we recovered?" At that time, the mirror world had already been set up by caster as the magic workshop. At that time, the magic circle and the super powerful magic cannon attack that we saw at that time were the effects of the magic workshop. Rin Imban added. In this way, Ilya completely understood. So, Big Brother can also set up countless magic circles in his own house. Ilya said with some excitement. After all, the power of countless magic cannons was really not small, and the scene was very spectacular and gorgeous. Ilya naturally felt that it was very powerful. Well, in fact, I can do it now. Wuming touched his chin, then snapped his fingers. In an instant, countless magic circles of various sizes appeared in various places of Shuasuke's house. The courtyard, the house, the sky, and the ground were full of magic circles everywhere. Even the bowl and chopsticks used by Ilya had several small magic circles. Ilya was instantly shocked. Each magic circle is full of magic power beyond imagination. There should be a limit to cheating, Bazette, Livia, and Rin Hasaka said with some disbelief. Then, Wuming snapped his fingers again, and all the magic circles disappeared in an instant. These are very simple magic circles that can release magic cannons. What I don't lack the least is magic power. These are no big deal, Wuming said modestly. Rin Hasaka and the others' mouths twitched. Sure enough, heroic spirits and humans could not be compared. Even a heroic spirit's clone servant was not something the humans could catch up with. Not to mention that the servant in front of them was a top-level fantasy breed that had always been alive. These are all child's play. As long as it's an enemy, I can instantly make it disappear the moment it enters Shuasuke's house. Wuming said with a smile. Extreme cold, extreme flame, concentrated venom, forced gravity suppression, atomic split, concept rewriting. As long as it's in my shrine, I'm a true god, Wuming said without hesitation. Well, although it was true, it had to be inside Wuming's magic workshop. Therefore, if the enemy attacked from the outside and did not enter Wuming's magic workshop, then Wuming could not be a god for people who were not in the magic workshop. By the way, Big Brother, I have something to ask you. Little Black suddenly said. What is it, Little Black? Wuming nodded, indicating that Little Black could ask. Since Shuasuke's house is Big Brother's magic workshop, then will Big Brother do something to us when we are asleep? Everyone was a little dumbfounded. Also, will Big Brother spy on us through the surveillance camera? Xiao He is really curious. Although everyone knew that Wuming would not do this, they felt more and more uneasy when Little Black said this. I say you. Wuming was a little helpless. Just as he opened his mouth to say a few words, young Gil on the side interrupted Wuming's speech. You guys are too shallow. Teacher's words do not need to be sneaky. It must be open and above board. You guys can rest assured. Everyone hugged their bodies tightly. I feel like you're making me sound worse. How can that be? Teacher, I'm just telling the truth. It hurts. This hand chop is a lesson. Next time use my body. Please show mercy, teacher. Just like this, with an uneasy mentality, everyone began the last sleep of this world. Chapter 278. In the middle of the night, when almost everyone was asleep, Wuming appeared on the roof of the Shuayu residence and looked at the Yuanzong mountain. That's right, he was looking at the Yuanzong mountain that had been destroyed, but had reappeared. Space displacement, huh? Wu Ming frowned and explained the reason for the reappearance of the Yuanzong mountain. Teacher, it seems like the other party has already found their way here. Accompanied by golden particles, young Gil landed beside Wu Ming and looked at the Yuanzong mountain together. The Magic Association and the Holy Church are going to be busy again. Wu Ming shook his head expressionlessly. Previously, the reason why Wu Ming didn't cover up the disappearance of the Yuanzong mountain and directly attributed it to the meteorite and natural gas was because the sun that Wu Ming summoned that night had attracted the attention of the residents in the surrounding cities. The Magic Association and the Holy Church used their magic to hint at the meteorite and natural gas explosion and successfully imprinted it into the hearts of the people. And now, the Yuanzong mountain that had been covered up and disappeared had reappeared. Without thinking, Wu Ming knew that it would be extremely troublesome to deal with the aftermath. Since the other party is already here, shouldn't we go and meet them, teacher? Young Gil said with a relaxed expression. Actually, that's what I was thinking, but... Wu Ming smiled mysteriously. Young Gil shivered. His mischievous personality wasn't affected by his teacher at all. The next morning, Ilya woke up in her own bedroom. Although Ilya had stayed in Wu Ming's house for a short period of time, it was still easy for her to sleep soundly. I don't recognize the ceiling, Ilya said in a daze. Right, this is Big Brother and Mayo's house. No, you can't sleep in someone else's house. Although she said that, Ilya didn't panic. After all, she had stayed here for quite some time, and this could be considered her second home. Ilya hurriedly sat up and patted her face. Then, she began to wash up in the bathroom in the bedroom. It had to be said that one could really do anything with money. Not only did Wu Ming and Mayo's rooms have their own private bathroom, but even the rest of the guest rooms had their own private bathroom. And these independent bathrooms were luxurious, with toilets, washstands, baths, and almost everything. And because it was Wu Ming's magic workshop, it had an automatic cleaning function, which was why Wu Ming didn't hire others to clean such a large house. Although Mayu would clean it sometimes, because it was too clean, Mayu didn't have anything to clean for Mayu. I can only say that is expected of Big Brother. Mayu seems to be living the life of a young lady. Ilya thought. After walking out of the bedroom, Ilya arrived at the dining room. Ilya had been living in Wu Ming's house for nearly every morning. Either she would get up because she couldn't stay in bed in someone else's house, or she would be gently awakened by Wu Ming. But after washing up, the first thing she would do was to go to the dining room of the Shuayu residence. After all, it's Big Brother's food. I have to treat this food well. Ilya gulped, somewhat impatient. The dining room of the Shuayu residence wasn't large, but it was still much larger than the dining rooms of ordinary people. It was more than enough to accommodate Rin Enbin, Ilya, and the others. After arriving at the dining room, Ilya discovered that Rin Enbin, Luvia, Mayu, Blackie, Bizette, and Gil were already sitting at the table and enjoying the food. Am I the last one? Ilya scratched her head in embarrassment. Too slow, Ilya. If you came any later, I would have eaten your share, Blackie said mischievously. How can that be? Ilya hurriedly sat down, expressing her ownership of the breakfast. That's why, Ilya-chan, you can only eat good food if you sleep early and wake up early. Ruby darted out from Ilya's hair, wriggled her body, and floated beside Ilya to tease her. I'm also waking up early now, but everyone woke up earlier than me. Speaking of which, why is everyone able to wake up so early? Ilya sat down on her seat and began to enjoy the breakfast that her big brother had prepared for her. Seriously, even though you're Ilya, you still have the habit of lazing in bed. I think you were able to wake up because of the temptation of Big Brother's breakfast. Blackie's words seemed to have exposed Ilya's secret, and Ilya's face instantly flushed red. Ow! How is that possible? In response, Ilya could only laugh dryly. If it's me, I only need to sleep for 4 hours, Bizette suddenly said seriously. Ilya laughed dryly. If she remembered correctly, this big sister in front of her seemed to be called a monster by Big Sister Ling and Big Sister Livia. As for Lord Mayu, it's because of a good habit that she's been cultivating. Sapphire floated beside Mayu and explained. Because, because Brother Wooming has been working very hard, so I wanted to wake up early to help Brother Wooming do something, Mayu said with a slightly red face. As for Ling and Livia, I think they were the ones who were purely tempted by Wooming's delicious food. Ruby floated above Ling and Livia's heads and said playfully while wriggling her body, "How is that possible, Ruby?" Ilya was just about to refute when she saw Ling and Livia's faces instantly turn red. Could it really be? Ilya was embarrassed. "I think you're tired of living, Ruby." Rin Inbin instantly grabbed Ruby. "How dare you casually judge a lady? You better be mentally prepared, Ruby." Wait, Ilya, save me." Then, Ruby was pulled into a room by two people. Ilya was helpless. "What about Gil Cohen?" In order to hide her embarrassment, Ilya looked at this child who looked younger than her, but was a king. "Isn't this normal? I'm a king." Which king would laze around in bed? Young Gil held a glass of red wine elegantly and took a sip. "Is that so?" Ilya smiled. "Speaking of which, why is Big Brother gone? Is he still in the kitchen?" Ilya just realized that Wooming was not among the people eating here. "If it's teacher, he's outside now." Young Gil seemed to have thought of something and smiled slightly. "If it's possible, I suggest that all of you go out and take a look. It must be very interesting," Young Gil said mysteriously. Coincidentally, Rin Inbin and Livia had also returned at this time, along with Ruby, who seemed to have been played with. "Ruby." Ilya looked at Ruby with some heartache. "Ilya, you must avenge me." Ruby looked like she could not take it anymore, and her voice began to tremble. "Please let me deal with my sister, Ilya-sama." As Sapphire spoke, a string appeared from her body and wrapped around Ruby, dragging her away. Wait, little blue." When she was being pushed away by Sapphire, Ruby regained her energetic voice. As expected, she's pretending again. Ilya was helpless. "By the way, what did Wooming do again?" Rin Enbin asked curiously after hearing Young Gil's words. "You'll know when you go out." Young Gil took another sip of red wine elegantly. Ilya and the others looked at each other, then stood up one after another and walked outside. "Big Brother, listen to Gil Kuiner," Ilya said as she pushed the door open. But the moment she opened the door, Ilya's voice stopped abruptly. As if she was stunned by the scene before her, Ilya was stunned. Of course, the others were the same. Wooming, who was standing in the snow, turned his head and smiled. "What? Have you all finished eating?" Chapter 279. Everyone was stunned. Of course, it wasn't because Wooming had suddenly become so handsome. Instead, it was because of their surroundings. The mansion was still the familiar mansion. The sky was still the familiar sky. The city outside was still the same city. However, Big Brother, what's going on? Why is it snowing all of a sudden? Ilya was a little excited. That's right. The mansion was still the familiar mansion. The sky was still the familiar sky. The city outside was still the same city. Everything that Ilya and the others saw was covered in a layer of snow. In short, it was snowing. Is this what Gilgamesh meant when he said it was very interesting? Although I don't know how you made it snow in the summer. Why did you suddenly do it? Rin Tasaka walked to the snowy ground in the courtyard. He asked Wooming while enjoying the coldness brought about by the snowflakes. Everyone walked to the courtyard as well. Through the temperature and material structure, this is indeed snow. Bazit analyzed seriously. Amazing. Big Brother, it's really snow. Ilya started running in the courtyard. She was enjoying the fun that could only be enjoyed in winter. Mayu also reached out her hand in nostalgia. She felt the coolness brought about by the snowflakes. I didn't do anything to the weather. Wooming waved his hand innocently. Isn't it Big Brother who did it? Little Black asked in confusion. Everyone looked at Wooming in confusion. We've already arrived in a parallel world. Everyone in the house exclaimed. Only Mayu, who had more or less guessed it, and young Gil, who already knew about it, didn't make a fuss. Hey, don't be so surprised. Aren't you all prepared to head to a parallel world? Wooming covered his ears helplessly. But, after sleeping for a night, we arrived in a parallel world. It's not shocking at all. Little Black had a look of regret. Yeah, Shouldn't transmigrating to a parallel world be very spectacular? Transmigrating to a parallel world just like that is quite boring. Ilya agreed. Traveling through parallel worlds is an ability comparable to magic. I originally wanted to observe it carefully, but it's a pity. Bazit coughed and said with a reddened face. More importantly, we're going to travel to a parallel world. A parallel world. What do you think this is? Do you think we'll arrive at our destination after taking a nap on the train? Rin in Osaka said frantically. You're just a mere monkey. To put it bluntly, you're just throwing a tantrum because you didn't see it, Livia said gracefully. It was as if she wasn't among the group of people who had screamed just now. You upstart. Aren't you the same? At least I'll say it out loud. You, on the other hand, only know how to keep it in your heart and pretend to be elegant. How disgusting. Rin in Osaka also elegantly played with her twin ponytails and began mocking Livia. A mere Japanese monkey pretending to be elegant is even more disgusting. You blonde upstart. Japanese monkeys. Immediately, the two of them began to wrestle with each other like children. Sigh. Ruby sighed helplessly as she watched the two of them wrestle. As expected, giving up on the two of them was the right choice. My Ilya is still the best. She's bullied by me every day and doesn't throw a tantrum immediately, Ruby said with a playful tone as if she was taking pleasure in others' misfortune. Mayu-sama is also better than Livia-sama in this aspect. Also, sister, Ilya-sama isn't a toy, Sapphire said and tapped Ruby. That's right. Don't tease me every day, Ruby. Ilya also protested. Really, you guys are really noisy, Wuming said helplessly. Then, Wuming held Mayo's hand and walked to the side. Brother Wuming? Mayu didn't understand why Wuming was holding her hand. Wuming didn't answer Mayo's question and only looked at Mayu dotingly. This made Mayu blush. Actually, the enemy already appeared last night. When Wuming said this, whether it was Rin, Inbin, and Livia who were fooling around or Mayu who was being held by Wuming, everyone tensed up. Of course, except for the young Gil. The Yuzong mountain that disappeared last night has reappeared. Wasn't it done by the Magic Association or the Holy Church? Ilya asked. The Magic Association wouldn't use a method to repair the Yuzong mountain in one night. It's not worth it. As for the Holy Church, they're the same as the Magic Association. Rin Inbin shook his head. That's right. Also, if my senses aren't wrong, the Yuzong Mountain's reappearance is due to displacement magic. Wuming held Mayo's hand and said to everyone, Are you talking about the Ainsworth family? Livia asked solemnly. Most likely. Wuming nodded. Feeling the tension from Mayo's body, Wuming gently held the back of Mayo's hand. Don't worry, Mayu. This time, I'll take care of Ainsworth once and for all, Wuming said with incomparable confidence. Okay, I believe in Brother Wuming. Mayu hugged Wuming's arm, her face filled with warmth. Ahem, Little Black coughed. Mayu hurriedly let go of Wuming's arm. It's time for a meeting. Even Mayu can't be lovey-dovey in front of us. Little Black said sternly. Yes, yes. Mayu nodded with a red face. Wuming laughed. You little girl, you're obviously jealous. However, as if he had gotten the words he wanted, Little Black laughed. Since Big Brother said so, then I'll hug Big Brother's arm. Ha! Little Black pounced and instantly fell into Wuming's arms. Wuming subconsciously caught Little Black. Little Black, how can you do this? Ilya shouted and hurriedly ran to Wuming's side. As a girl, how can you be so immature? As she spoke, Ilya tugged at Little Black's arm that was hugging Wuming. Ilya is jealous, right? Do you want to do it together with me? Little Black rolled his eyes and said sneakily. That? Ilya was slightly hesitant and stunned. Seeing the hesitant Ilya, Little Black felt as if he had caught something that could be used against her. As expected, Ilya is jealous. I'm not. Anyway, let go of Big Brother. Ilya started tugging again with a red face. That Ilya, Little Black, let go of Big Brother first. Mayu sat beside Wuming and said shyly, Since it's like this, then let's hug Big Brother together. Little Black decided to just go with the flow. What a sinful man. Bazet shook his head. Lulakan, Rin in Osaka, and Luia said in disdain. This king is happy to see this side of teacher. Young Gil pretended to be mature as he looked at Wuming. Wuming's face was filled with helplessness. All right, let's stop when it's appropriate. Wuming raised his hand and instantly slammed it down. Bam! Chapter 280. Wuming raised his hand and slashed down. The hand blade that landed consecutively hit young Jill, Ilya, and Little Black's heads. Ugh! Ilya held her head and yelled. It hurts. Big brother, what are you doing? Little Black protested. You guys are already considered light. Wuming pointed at young Gil. Ilya and Little Black turned around and saw that young Gil had fainted on the spot. Smoke was rising from his head. Then why is Mayu fine? Little Black saw that his attack had failed and quickly changed the target. Mayu was shocked. Mayu is very obedient, unlike you and Ilya. As he said that, Wuming patted Mayu's head. Mayu cooperatively rubbed her head against his. Little Black and Ilya stared at Wuming and Mayu with puffed-up cheeks. Seeing Ilya and Little Black's reaction, Wuming quickly patted their heads and apologized. All right, it's my fault. I'll treat you guys to something later as an apology. Please forgive me. That's more like it. I say, it's about time to continue the topic. Rin Bin held his forehead helplessly. That's right. Jokes are enough. After all, we still have serious matters to attend to. Lu Weiya nodded. Wuming patted Ilya and Little Black's heads again and gestured for them to return to their seats. Knowing that it was time to be serious, the two of them returned to their seats. As for Mayu, she naturally continued to sit beside Wuming. Last night, I purposely went to the new Yuanzhong mountain to investigate. As he spoke, Wuming began to recall. Wuming cast a few concealment tactics on himself and quietly arrived at the Yuanzhong mountain. As expected, part of the ley lines had been replaced. Wuming crouched on the ground with one hand on the ground and examined the ley lines of the Yuanzhong mountain. Wuming stood up and looked in the direction of the entrance. Mayu had once told Wuming that when she first came to this world, she had walked out of the big hole. In this way, through counter-evidence, the enemy should have appeared in the big hole in the Yuanzhong mountain. With that said, Wuming walked towards the entrance of the large hole. Wuming stopped when he was about to approach. To be safe, let's use this, Wuming said as he reached his hand into the golden ripples and took out a card. It depicted a person wearing a skull mask and holding a curved dagger. This was the Assassin class card. Class card Assassin. Install Dream Summon. In an instant, Wuming's mana wrapped around the class card. Then, the class card melted and turned into a ball of mana that wrapped around Wuming. After the mana calmed down, Wuming appeared in a black robe. The hooded black robe wrapped tightly around Wuming. Only his face was exposed. Wuming wore a skull mask that could only cover his eyes. In addition to his expressionless face, anyone would think that he was an emotionless killer. As expected, it's the cursed wrist again. With that said, Wuming revealed an arm that was hidden under the cloak. The arm was wrapped in bandages and no skin could be seen. However, it was no different from Wuming's normal arm except for an extra layer of bandages. At this moment, the arm wrapped in bandages was emitting wisps of black gas that spread towards Wuming's body. The arm of the demon god? No wonder Shinji Madu was deranged. Even without the side effects of the card, ordinary people would be corroded by this arm. To think that he could still maintain a little bit of self-awareness. Wuming felt the evil energy from his arm as if it could not be suppressed and was about to corrode Wuming. However, since it's just a mere power, you should calm down. With that said, wisps of lightning burst out from Wuming's body. Wuming's bandaged arm seemed to be trembling. The black gas was retracted and it calmed down. Wuming retracted his arm under his robe and disappeared from where he stood in a flash. Inside the Yuanzhong mountain, two females appeared here. The one on the left spoke first. This should be the Yuanzhong mountain of the other world. She was dressed strangely. Her lower body was covered in golden armor, and her upper body was only covered by clothes that covered her chest. There were red patterns on her abdomen and waist, and golden armor on her arms. Her hair was tied into two thin ponytails with a decorative horn embedded on one side of the ponytails. Coupled with her cold eyes, she had the aura of a queen. This woman was none other than Angelica Ainsworth, the one who used the Gilgamesh card. Really, it's just a holy grail. Why would the two of us need to make a move? Isn't this too much of a fuss? The one on the right spoke. She had red hair that was tied into two ponytails. She wore tattered fur clothes that covered her abdomen. Her lower body was covered in fur, and her legs were covered with fur boots that looked like long boots. Her golden eyes were filled with raging madness, accompanied by a wide smile, which made people feel terrified. However, the most terrifying thing was her right hand. Her huge right hand was as thick as a small car, and she was holding a hammer that was filled with lightning. Don't be careless, Beatrice Frowerchad. Although Hyunryong was defeated by Lord Julian, he was absorbed by the Holy Grail that crossed over here. There's no guarantee that he won't come back to life. Don't forget, when you used the Hercules card, you were killed by him. If Lord Julian didn't save you, you wouldn't be standing here. After listening to Angelica's words, the girl named Beatrice was a little scared. At that time, the berserker who came with Atlas was Beatrice. For some unknown reason, Beatrice, who used the Berserker class card, completely went berserk, and her appearance became the same as the original Berserker. When Wooming invaded her inner world, Beatrice had a mental breakdown because of Wooming. She directly contacted the dream summoning and turned into a puppet and disappeared. Although that's the case, you're not dead. Compared to the others, you're easier to control. This is why Lord Julian replaced you. Angelica said coldly. Yes, I know. Beatrice pretended to say helplessly, but she still looked quite arrogant. However, Angelica wouldn't say anything to Beatrice. As a puppet, all she needed to do was to obey her master's orders, and nothing else was required. Let's go. Lord May, you should be here. Let's complete the mission as soon as possible. What should I say? Knowing that I'm likely to be here, Julian only sent 2 people. A voice came from the void. Who is it? Chapter 281. Angelica and Beatrice were both shocked. Both of them did not notice the incoming enemy. A black figure walked out of the shadows. Why? I haven't seen you for 2 months. Don't you recognize me, Angelica? The person took off his hood and revealed his face. It's you. Wooming, no. I should call you Hyunryong. Angelica's eyes narrowed suddenly. It's him. Compared to Angelica, Beatrice's performance was much worse. She clearly felt the fear in her heart. It was Wooming who invaded her inner world and caused her to have a mental breakdown and disappear. The one beside you is the Berserker, right? Wooming seemed to recognize Beatrice and looked at her. After all, Wooming was the one who caused her to have a mental breakdown. Wooming naturally knew what she looked like in her inner world. How pitiful. She was used as a puppet by Julian again. Wooming was not surprised. He just felt a little pity. After understanding Beatrice's inner world, Wooming really felt sorry for this girl. However, although he felt sorry for her, Wooming would not show mercy to his enemies. Damn it, don't underestimate me. Beatrice was furious when she felt Wooming's pitiful eyes. In an instant, the giant hammer in Beatrice's hand flashed with purple lightning and sizzled. Zila dash. Beatrice controlled the purple lightning and blasted it in Wooming's direction. Is this lightning that can cause harm to God? After Wooming became a God Slayer, even if he left the world of God Slayers, the God Slayer's physique remained with Wooming. It had a very high magic resistance. Spells that did not reach the God level would not work on God Slayers. Only magic that could cause harm to God or pure physical attacks could cause harm to God Slayers. This special effect naturally included Wooming's avatar as a servant. But if that's all, then there's no need to defend. As Wooming spoke, he did not do anything. He only used his physical body to take Beatrice's lightning attack. The result was naturally intact. What? He took my attack with just his physical body, and he's still intact. Beatrice was in disbelief. After all, Wooming, who had undergone the root baptism and had grown a lot, could be regarded as a top existence among fantasy breeds. As a top existence of fantasy breeds, his defense could not be broken by an ordinary attack, even if he was a servant's avatar. It doesn't look like you used a defensive ability or the ability of a class card. Angelica frowned. Did you recognize the class card I'm using now? You're right. After all, you're a member of the Ainsworth family. I'm showing off in front of an expert. With that said, Wu-Ming canceled the assassin class card. But then again, Ainsworth's things are really useful. Wu-Ming smiled. It seems that the class cards that were scattered in this world should have been recovered by you. Angelica said indifferently. Why do you want it? Wu-Ming put the assassin into the golden ripple, but he was not in a hurry to take his hand out. I don't think you'll just give us the class card, Yang. Angelica narrowed her eyes. Of course, as long as your goal is still Mayu. With that said, Wu-Ming pulled his hand out of the golden ripple, and along with Wu-Ming's hand, he pulled out the golden twisted scepter. Then we're enemies, noble and powerful, wise and kind. I will incarnate into a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. With the chanting of the soul language, Wu-Ming's magic power seemed to have become endless, and it spread to the surroundings wantonly. This huge amount of magic power. Angelica and Beatrice raised their hands and subconsciously resisted the storm caused by Wu-Ming's magic power. The power of the magician incarnation was not only able to give people protection, enhance the power of magic, and speed up the chanting of spells. The most important thing was that after activating the magician incarnation, Wu-Ming's magic output was doubled. For example, Wu-Ming's magic power was a lake. Usually, Wu-Ming relied on the tap connected to his home to extract water. Now, Wu-Ming relied on opening the dam gate to extract water. What did this mean? This meant that Wu-Ming, who activated the magician incarnation, could use more powerful magic. Wu-Ming touched the ground with the bottom of the staff of Ains Ergal. Just in an instant, Angelica and Beatrice found that the scene around them changed. The two of them stood on a huge rock in the middle of an endless expanse of magma. As for Wu-Ming, he floated in the sky and looked down at the two of them from above. Inherent barrier. Nazarik's seventh layer of magma hell. The magician's buff allowed Wu-Ming to instantly activate the inherent barrier. Not only that, but the inherent barrier was also strengthened. This is inherent barrier? Beatrice broke out in cold sweat. Even if she knew that Angelica had a world-defying noble phantasm, Beatrice, who already had a psychological fear of Wu-Ming, was even more afraid. Let me give you a greeting, ladies. Wu-Ming gracefully performed an ancient noble's etiquette, and then raised the staff of Ains Ergal. Parallel deployment. Super magic. Fall down. Countless interlocking magic circles constantly appeared in every corner of the inherent barrier. The sky, magma, rocks, almost every place was occupied by magic circles, except for a few meters around the two. Countless magic circles seemed to be connected, and one by one, all the magic circles flashed with blue light. Not good. Angelica quickly activated Gate of Babylon, and countless golden ripples appeared around Angelica and Beatrice. There were simply too many of them. It was impossible to use the Gate of Babylon's noble phantasm to destroy all of these magic circles that were obviously not to be trifled with. Beatrice, if you don't want to die, hurry up and defend, Angelica said to Beatrice anxiously. I know it even if you don't say it. Beatrice was sweating, and the giant hammer in her hand produced violent lightning. Well, that's it. If you can survive, then I will return the class card to you. After that, Wu-Ming smiled and disappeared from the inherent barrier. A few seconds after Wu-Ming disappeared, all the magic circles seemed to have reached the limit, and they burst out with amazing light and heat, dyeing the entire inherent barrier into a world of light. Chapter 282. After that, I immediately activated the spell that transmigrated through parallel worlds overnight, bringing you and the Shuayu residents here while you were still asleep. Wu-Ming finished his explanation. In other words, when the enemy attacked, you wiped them out and brought us to the enemy's lair? Rin in Osaka summarized. If only it was as easy as you make it out to be. Wuming looked at Rin in Osaka helplessly. But the enemy was indeed wiped out by you, wasn't it? Rin in Osaka waved his hand. Speaking of which, if you were able to wipe out the enemy's strongest force, how did you get defeated? Livia raised her doubts. In his explanation, Wuming said that the enemy was the Ainsworth family's strongest force. This has nothing to do with strength. Wuming shook his head. Look at Gil. He was also defeated by me. Wuming then pointed at young Gil, who had woken up. Did I fall asleep just now? I think I dreamt that Sensei knocked on my head and my head hurt. Young Gil had a pained expression as he held his head with one hand. That's true, all right, Ilya retorted helplessly. Cough, anyway, the enemy used something that countered me and tricked me. I'm not the same person now. Wuming continued. Also, the most important thing is that Mount Yuanzong exploded again. Wuming helplessly waved his hand. What? Everyone was shocked. That? Because I was a little interested. Yesterday's move was a little exaggerated. Wuming laughed awkwardly. Although Wuming released his supreme level magic in his own inherent barrier, and the inherent barrier was strengthened by the magician's attribute, the supreme level magic that Wuming used yesterday was one of the best supreme level magic spells that focused on destruction. Moreover, because of the Sorcerer Avatar's bonus, the super magic that originally required a long time to be released could be released in just a dozen seconds. Also, because Wuming used Magic Power Explosion once, Wuming used Parallel Spread, and the supreme level magic he used almost covered the entire inherent barrier. The so-called Parallel Spread was a move that used multiple skills. This was the skill that Wuming analyzed from a class card. After all, it was troublesome to use supreme level magic one by one. So Wuming simply used Parallel Spread and released countless supreme level magic spells. Moreover, Wuming also used Chain Formation, which linked the power of each magic formation to get the result of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = infinity. That was also related to Wuming's double authority. That was the power of Wuming's noble phantasm, 12 incarnations. Each incarnation could be said to be a powerful noble phantasm. However, those noble phantasm could only be used by Wuming alone, because the magical power consumed by those noble phantasm was comparable to the magical power of a Holy Grail. Then, after being hit by such a powerful attack, the inherent barrier was directly broken. Even the Yuanzong mountain seemed to have been hit by a meteor once again. Wuming didn't know how the news reported this time. That night, Wuming directly used sorcery to leave. Well, after all, it's also an accident that I caused. It's better to run away quickly. Wuming waved his hand awkwardly. Really, even if that's the case, the magic association won't trouble you. What are you afraid of? Rin Enbin helplessly stroked his cheek. So, if we just follow such a big building to the parallel world, won't it attract the attention of the officials? Livia asked. It had to be said that Livia had asked a good question. Of course not. As you know, I lived in this world for a while. I also have my own house in Winterwood City in this world. When I moved Shuo Suki's house here, I chose to exchange it with this world's house. Wuming said with a smile, then waved his hand, and a screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen, a house similar to Shuo Suki's house appeared. This is the original location of Shuo Suki's house. I have moved the house in this world, and now the house in this world is Shuo Suki's house. Wuming explained. As expected, there are many times when I feel that Wuming is a friend and not an enemy. That's great. Rin Enbin sighed and then said, I have to say, Rin Enbin is right. It's great that you're not an enemy. Livia also said, You're making it sound too serious. Wuming laughed. The enemy is more difficult to deal with than you think. Speaking of the enemy, we still don't know the exact situation of the enemy. Big brother, can you explain to us about the Ainsworth family? Ilya looked at Wuming curiously. Ainsworth family, huh? Wuming thought for a moment. Okay then. Then, they moved to the conference room. Wuming sat solemnly at the head of the table. Everyone sat in their own seats and looked at Wuming meticulously. First of all, The Ainsworth family is a family that specializes in substitution magic. However, because they specialize in substitution magic, they have developed the originally inferior substitution magic to its peak. No matter if it's space, personality, heroic spirit power, or even traveling to a parallel world, they could do it all. That's how they created the class cards. As he spoke, Wuming took out 6 class cards and slapped them on the table. Just in case, may you, Ilya, take these 6 class cards first. As he spoke, Wuming tossed the class cards to Mayu and Ilya. Hey, shoot, Ilya made a cute sound with the help of the card. I'll teach you dream summoning personally later. Mayu and Ilya nodded. The Ainsworth family usually relies on heroic spirit cards and substitution magic. They don't have any effective strategies for this. Well, I'm not prepared to let you go to the battlefield anyway. Wuming waved his hand. Everyone was stunned. What do you mean by not letting us go to the battlefield? Rin in Osaka slammed the table and stood up. You didn't hear wrong. It's the literal meaning, Wuming said calmly. Let's not talk about you and Livia. I'm not prepared to let Mayu and Ilya go to the battlefield either. But Brother Wuming, Mayu looked at Wuming with some reluctance. Ilya did the same. I don't have a choice. The enemy's battlefield is no ordinary disaster. I gave you the class cards so that you can protect yourselves. In truth, Wuming had never intended to let them go to the battlefield, whether it was before or after they persuaded Wuming. Chapter 283. I've always been prepared to attack Ainsworth from the front, whether you come or not, Wuming said solemnly. That's because Ainsworth's army is an army of heroic spirits. As soon as Wuming said that, everyone's eyes narrowed. Wait a minute. Are you saying that Ainsworth has created a lot of class cards? Livia asked, puzzled. No matter how they thought about it, it was impossible, right? Everyone could not help but think. It's indeed impossible, but the opponent has an item that can mass-produce Black Mud followers. Black Mud followers? That's right. Those are inferior heroes who failed in their pursuit of the Holy Grail. As long as their obsession is not destroyed, they can be resurrected infinitely. Wuming could not help but think of the scene where he was tricked. Countless black mud covered the sky and covered the earth. The black mud came from an item in Julian's hand, Pandora's box. Wuming had seen clearly that there were followers hidden in the black mud. However, in order to deal with Wuming, these followers were turned into waves by the black mud and engulfed Wuming. Moreover, what worried Wuming the most was that the black mud was mixed with the root dragon's aura, which was the aura of the great root. This was equivalent to increasing the power of these black mud followers. Against such a group of powerful troops who were not afraid of death and could resurrect infinitely, Ilya and the others could not deal with it. Leave the specifics to me. Wuming shook his head and did not continue. I didn't expect your help in the first place. Naturally, I didn't include you in the battle force. After all, this is a plan that I've been planning for a long time. My original plan was to only bring Mayu to fight against Ainsworth. But it's rare for us to come here and help Big Brother. Ilya lowered her head in disappointment. Ilya, Mayu comforted Ilya. Indeed, if it's really as Master said, and the enemy has an army that can resurrect infinitely and isn't afraid of death, I don't think we can defeat them. Bazit said seriously. Wuming sighed when he saw the disappointment on everyone's faces. After all, Wuming didn't take them into account, so Ilya and the others weren't part of his initial plan. However, we can't be sure that the other party won't create new dolls and class cards, so I have a new plan, Wuming said again to comfort everyone. Does this mean that we can help Big Brother? Ilya's eyes lit up. Wuming waved his hand. Well, that's only if the other party has card users of other ranks. Before I explain the plan, let me pick up 2 people first. Pick someone up? That's right. Pick someone up. Wuming laughed mischievously. In the main hall of the Shuayu residence, a red-haired boy with orange pupils and a purple-haired girl with purple pupils stood together. Looking at the way they held hands, it was obvious that they were a couple. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Shiro Amiya. Nice to meet you. I'm Sakura Madu. Nice to meet you. The 2 of them greeted a large number of unfamiliar faces politely. That's right, The two of them were Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were saved by Gem Master. They were now brought back by Wooming. After Wooming and Mayu left, just as Shiro Amiya was about to be captured by Angelica, Zelik appeared and took Shiro Amiya away. As for Sakura Madu, she had been taken away by Zelik earlier, so Angelica could only find Shiro Amiya in the Amiya mansion. Amiya-kun. Rindo Saka had a shocked expression. Soro. Luvia had a look of disbelief. Brother? Ilya and Xiaohei were dumbfounded. As for Bizet, since he didn't know Shiro Amiya at all, he didn't make a fuss about it. Shiro and Ai-chan, Sakura and Ai-chan, long time no see. Mayu, on the other hand, bowed politely after seeing the two of them. Mayu, long time no see, Shiro greeted with a smile. Thank you for your concern. Mayu-chan, Sakura Madu replied gently. On the other hand, young Gil kept sizing up Shiro Amiya. Is this sensei's younger brother in this world? Although he looks good, I feel disgusted. For some reason, young Gil didn't like Shiro Amiya. Why is brother here? Ilya's eyes widened as she looked at Wooming in disbelief. Rindo Saka and Luvia, who had calmed down, reacted. I'm afraid he's Shiro Amiya in this parallel world, the two of them said. Well, anyway, that's how it is. Wooming, who was standing at the side, shrugged. Shiro is a human who doesn't need a class card to unleash the power of a heroic spirit. Everyone instantly looked at Shiro Amiya in surprise. Well, brother is right. Due to an accident, I connected to myself in a parallel world. After I died in that world, I became a heroic spirit. Shiro Amiya helplessly touched the back of his head. That's amazing. To be able to become a heroic spirit, as expected of brother, Ilya said in surprise. Indeed, even if you become a heroic spirit in a parallel world, it also means that you have the qualifications to become a heroic spirit in this world, Bazit said solemnly. By the way, Little Black, your card is Amiya, the heroic spirit. Is that for real? Little Black was shocked. Wooming didn't say anything. He only smiled and shrugged. Speaking of which, Wooming looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were holding hands. Looks like you and Sakura have made good progress while I was away. Shiro, when are you going to officially meet me as your guardian? Wooming looked at Shiro Amiya with a smile. When Wooming said that, Sakura Madu's face instantly turned red. Big brother. Amiya could only laugh dryly. Rin and Osaka and Luvia's expressions darkened. Although the Shiro Amiya in front of them wasn't the Shiro Amiya they knew, no matter what, the Shiro Amiya in this world was indeed Shiro Amiya. Seeing Shiro Amiya with another woman, the two of them felt uneasy. Bam! Bam! After 2 consecutive karate chops, Rin and Osaka and Luvia calmed down. Well, no matter what, I'll congratulate the two of you. Before Wooming picked up Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, he learned from Zelik that the two of them were sent by Zelik to be under Emilo II's management and become his disciples. Wooming felt that this was a good thing. Wooming had met Emilo II before, and he was a very reliable magician. Zelik told the two that Wooming and Mayo's situation was very safe and that they didn't need to worry. They only needed to study in the clock tower. Therefore, during this period of study, Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu's relationship quickly warmed up, and they quickly became a couple. Congratulations, big brother and big sister. Congratulations, Shiro Gij, big sister Sakura. Congratulations to the two newlyweds. Congratulations. Apart from Rin and Osaka and Luvia, the others naturally congratulated the three of them. Thank you, everyone. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled. Well, it won't be too late to hold the wedding after everything is settled. After saying that, everyone became extremely serious. Chapter 284. They redistributed their seats and sat in the meeting room. Wooming still sat at the head of the table. Rin Inbun, Luvia, Shiro Amiya, and Sakura Madu sat on Wooming's left. Bazet, Ilya, Little Black, and Mayu sat on Wooming's right. Gil sat across from Wuming. Since everyone is here, let's start the official allocation. Wuming crossed his arms in front of his chest with a solemn expression. Everyone felt the solemn atmosphere and puffed out their chests. Since the other party's goal is the Holy Grail, Ilya, Little Black, and Mei will be on standby at the Shiwa mansion. Wuming was the first to speak. Why is it like this? Ilya said with slight displeasure. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. The other party's goal is the Holy Grail. Other than Mayu, you and I might also be the other party's target, Little Black advised. Although Mayu was slightly dissatisfied, she was also someone who knew the severity of the situation. Hence, she nodded. When Ilya saw that her two companions agreed with Wuming's words, she could only nod helplessly in the end. Well, don't be unhappy. I'll make something nice for you later. Wuming comforted Ilya. Really? Big Brother is the best. Ilya smiled happily. Boo-hoo. Big Brother is unfair. I want to eat too. Little Black looked like an abandoned puppy. He lay on the table and stared at Wuming. That. Mayu also looked at Wuming hesitantly. She knew that she could not always cause trouble for her big brother. However, Mayu really wanted to eat her big brother's delicacies. Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then let's make glutinous rice balls. There will be a share for all three of us. How about that? Little Black said excitedly. I'm looking forward to it. Ilya said expectantly. Mayu nodded lightly. Looking at the three of them, who were extremely happy, Wuming smiled from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, there was a loud bang. Rin Enbin slammed the table and stood up. You guys, we're in the middle of a battle conference. Can you be more serious? Shiro Amiya and Sakura Midu smiled awkwardly, but did not say anything. After all, he was their big brother. They had to give him some face. However, the others didn't give him any face, especially Rin and Osaka and Lu Weiya, who had been provoked. After all, this is the enemy's time, so let's hurry up. Lu Weiya said angrily, and then turned her head away. Needless to say, Lu Weiya didn't want to see the palace guard, who was already taken, showing off his affection. Sorry, let's continue with the battle conference. Wuming coughed awkwardly. The three little Lolas also blushed. Rin Enbin and loses you too. To be honest, Wuming had a headache. Although these two girls were students of the clock tower, they were comparable to first-class magicians. However, in a battle where servants were involved, they were undoubtedly useless. You could say that they were a little hurt, but it happened that the damage they caused was not a big deal at all. Wuming touched his forehead, thought for a moment, and then said, How about this? You two also stay in Shuo Suki's house. In this regard, Rin, Enbin, and Luz didn't show much dissatisfaction. Although they said that they wanted to help, after knowing that the enemy was a servant, they basically gave up the idea of going to the battlefield. Although it was a bit of putting the cart before the horse, Rin, Enbin, and Luz still wanted to thank Wuming for not treating them as a burden. After all, Wuming didn't want them to come here together. Because of their personal reasons, they were brought here by Wuming. For such a result, the two couldn't say that they were disappointed, but they couldn't say that they were happy. After all, no one wanted to be treated as a useless guy. But you're different from Ilya and the others. You need to help me drive Shuo Suki's. The two were not surprised by Wuming's assistance. That, big brother, what do you mean by driving Shuo Suki's? Rin, Enbin, and Luz were puzzled. Ilya and the others were also quite puzzled. It means literally. Wuming finished and snapped his fingers. Then, with a pop sound, countless blue semi-virtual screens appeared in the conference room. On the countless blue virtual screens in the conference room, almost all of them showed something that not only Ilya and the others couldn't understand, but even Shiro Amiya, who lived with Wuming for a long time, couldn't understand. Wuming's hand gently moved, and a large number of blue virtual screens were removed, and a special virtual screen floated above Wuming's head. The reason why it was special was that this screen was all about Shuo Suki's and the surrounding real-time surveillance, including the surveillance of the conference room. Looking at the countless partitions, everyone was surprised. Is this a magic workshop? No matter how I look at it, it looks like a laboratory. Rin Inbin said helplessly. Well, this is a temple I modified according to modern times. Not only does it have real-time surveillance, but it also has visual obstruction enchantment, magic suppression enchantment platform, autonomous attack, chain enchantment, and other autonomous enchantments for attack, defense, and investigation. It also has space folding technology. As long as it is activated, the internal space of Shuo Suki's will be instantly enlarged by 100 times, and I have set up all kinds of traps that can be imagined. In addition, there are flight and transformation functions, and after referring to Gil's Vimana, I also added a few nuclear warheads. Wuming said, pointing to the innocent young Gil. Everyone looked at Wuming, who was talking nonstop, and they were all stunned, looking at Wuming blankly. All in all, this is a multifunctional strategic mobile fortress. I named it Shuo Suki Temple. Wuming finished and breathed a sigh of relief. No wonder I always felt that the house has become a little different. It turned out that it was transformed by my brother. Shiro Amiya sighed. No, Shiro Oniai-san, Brother Wuming did not transform Amiya Mansion, but build a new one in the parallel world. Mayu pointed out Shiro Amiya's misunderstanding. Well, when I built this house, it was not only to be my and Mayu's home. I have been planning to counterattack Ainsworth, of course. I have to be prepared. Wuming waved his hand, indicating that everyone should not make a fuss. Since I met you, my heart has almost gotten used to it. Same. Rin and Osaka and Livia both sighed at the same time. Well, at first, I just wanted to build a defense base, and it slowly developed into this. Wuming scratched his head. In short, your task is to be responsible for assisting us on the battlefield. I will teach you how to use it later. Then, Wuming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu. Shiro, Sakura, I ask you two again, do you really want to participate? Chapter 285. Wuming asked Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu when he went to pick them up from England. Do you really want to participate in this battle? I've already returned and am fully prepared. It doesn't matter if you don't participate. Wuming said. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu answered. Brother, I've been working hard to learn magic here just to wait for this day. I'll be wherever Senpai is. And now, their answers were exactly the same as before. Mayo's friends have all come to this world. As her brother, I can't fall behind. I'll be wherever Senpai is. This is also my way of repaying Brother Wuming for saving my life. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu's eyes were filled with determination. I'm really an idiot for asking you such a question. Wuming shook his head self-deprecatingly. Since you've already decided, then as your brother, I can only fully support you. Shiro and Sakura, you two will be in charge of the attack on Julian. Wuming arranged. However, when he mentioned Julian, Shiro Amiya still felt a little gloomy. After all, he considered himself to be a good friend. By the way, Shiro, I'll help you adjust your body later. And Sakura, remember to give me your rank card later. Rank cards created by those things, even if it's just pure strength, will erode your mind if you use it for a long time. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both nodded. Then, Wuming looked at Bizet, who had been silent all this time. Wuming actually didn't know how to deal with Bizet. Originally, it was only because of his bad taste that he let Bizet become a servant of the Shuo Yu residents, and he was half forced to come to the parallel world with him. After all, the backlight sword was a super bug-like existence. Even if Wuming's heart was super strong, he wouldn't dare take this causal weapon head-on. Who knew if his heart was strong enough? After all, the backlight sword only changed karma to strike the heart, and it didn't necessarily pierce through the heart. Of course, if his main body was here, there was nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to care about what I think. This is a mission given to me by the higher-ups. The only thing I can do is fight. Bizet seemed to know what Wuming was thinking, so he said this. Bizet had received news from his superiors that he was to follow Hyunryong to the parallel world, complete all his instructions, and bring back as much information as possible. Of course, those were added by Bizet's superiors. After all, it wasn't easy for them to come to parallel world, so how could they not collect some items? As for the matter of Wu Ming going to the parallel world, Wu Ming had told Zelik that there was no need to deliberately hide it. Instead of letting the higher-ups who were worried about Wu Ming's departure have wild thoughts and add trouble to Wu Ming, it was better to let them feel at ease and be obedient. Since you've said so, follow me to the battlefield. Then, follow Shiro and Sakura as a member of the execution team and attack the enemy leader. After all, you're not the type to fight in groups. I understand. Bazette nodded solemnly. Finally, Wu Ming looked at young Gil, who was sitting opposite him, and said, "Then, the last one is you, my disciple. Teacher, do you have a mission? I will be very obedient." Young Gil smiled elegantly and gently. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an innocent and beautiful boy. "If it's you, you don't need me to assign you a mission. Just act according to the situation," Wu Ming said with a look of disdain. Why are you like this, teacher?" Young Gil looked at Wu Ming as if he had been bullied. "Well, but since it's teacher's words, I can only obey." Wu Ming ignored young Gil and looked at everyone. "Then that's it. Ilya, Mayu, and Blackie will stay behind at the Shuayu mansion and act according to the situation. Ling and Livia will be responsible for driving the Shuayu mansion as support. Shiro, Sakura, and Bazette will be the execution team, specifically targeting Julian. Gil will roam the battlefield, and I will be responsible for resisting the army. Does anyone have any questions?" At this moment, Ilya raised her hand. "Ilya," Wu Ming called her name. "Yes, I want to know how Big Brother is going to resist the servant army. Is he going to fight alone? If not, Mayu, Blackie, and I can also help." Ilya said with concern, "You don't have to worry about this at all." The one who spoke was not Wu Ming, but Shiro Amiya. Big Brother has an army. Shiro Amiya was naturally talking about the golem Wu Ming summoned from Nazalik. At that time, because of various skills flying around on the battlefield, countless golem that were comparable to low-level servants were lost, and the rest were swallowed by the black mud in their struggle. Fortunately, those were only projections, and Wu Ming could naturally continue to summon them. However, even if there were many small soldiers, they were still small soldiers in front of an expert. However, Wu Ming naturally had a new idea. "You don't need to worry about that. I'm not going to fight against an army alone." Wu Ming smiled. "Well, I'll adjust Shiro's physical condition first. Everyone else, go and rest first." For a moment, only Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu were left in the conference room. Sakura Madu stayed behind to give the rank card to Wu Ming later and to accompany Shiro Amiya. "Well, take off your clothes first." Wu Ming spoke first. "Oh," Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both exclaimed. Looking at Sakura Madu, who was blushing, and looking at Shiro Amiya, who was slightly embarrassed, Wu Ming shook his head. Looking at the two's performance, Wu Ming knew that the two probably hadn't reached that stage yet. They probably just held hands, hugged, and kissed. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. Hurry up and take it off. Do you need me to help you? Wu Ming narrowed his eyes, looked at Shiro Amiya, and said threateningly, I know, Big Brother. As someone who lived with Shiro Amiya for almost 5 years, Shiro Amiya naturally understood Wu Ming's temperament. Therefore, Shiro Amiya quickly took off his clothes, leaving only his underwear on. The naked way, Gong Shirlang revealed a body full of strength, but not exaggerated muscles. This was the legendary saying, wearing clothes makes one look thin, but taking off clothes makes one look muscular. At this moment, Sakura Madu, who was looking at her lover's body, was already blushing and didn't dare to look over. Ahem, I only told you to take off your upper body. Why did you take off your lower body? Wu Ming laughed mischievously. Shiro Amiya, who was still blushing, suddenly looked helpless. This is good. It's easier to adjust your body, Wu Ming quickly said. Then, Wu Ming snapped his fingers, and a device similar to a man-made, transparent culture tank rose from the floor of the conference room. Chapter 286. Let's go in, Wu Ming said. Shiro Amiya looked at Wu Ming, then looked at Sakura Madu, and then walked toward the open container. When he reached the opening, Wuming pushed Shiro Amiya, and then slammed the container door shut. Really, this is not a life and death parting. Do you have to be so serious, cite young people nowadays? Wuming pretended to shake his head helplessly. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were originally shocked, were slightly embarrassed after hearing Wuming's words. Noble and powerful, wise and kind. That is, I will incarnate into a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. Wuming didn't say much nonsense and directly activated the magician incarnation. After all, this was a problem with magic, and this incarnation was more useful. Wuming stood in front of the container and stretched out a hand. Then, let's begin. After that, a golden magic circle the size of Wuming's palm appeared and kept rotating. The container, which originally only contained Shiro Amiya, was instantly filled with liquid, and Shiro Amiya blew a bubble. The originally featureless container also began to glow. Senpai, Sakura Madu ran to the front of the container worriedly. Oni-sama, what's going on? Won't Senpai drown? Looking at Sakura Madu's anxious expression, Wuming smiled helplessly. Don't worry. These are just some liquid that can make people get oxygen in an environment where they can't breathe. They are often used in the creation of androids, so don't worry. After hearing Wuming's words, Sakura Madu relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief. I used hypnosis magic. Shiro, you can have a good sleep. When you wake up, you will find that your body is very good. Wuming's words faintly. Shiro Amiya's eyelids began to slowly close in the container. Wuming stretched out his hand and took out a book from the golden ripples that appeared at the side. That book was Wuming's Noble Phantasm, the Nameless Spellbook. Then I'll start. After that, Wuming closed his eyes, held the Nameless Spellbook in one hand, and the other hand was flat on his chest, pointing to the container where Shiro Amiya was, and the magic circle on his palm began to change. With the addition of the magician avatar, Wuming could now directly release some magic without chanting, which was the case now. Many magic spells on the Nameless Spellbook were frequently used by Wuming, constantly acting on Shiro Amiya. In addition to producing culture fluid to make people fall asleep, this culture tank also had the effect of enhancing magic, playing a supporting role. After all, this was designed by Wuming, and it was basically according to Wuming's habits. Wuming stopped the magic circle in his hand, closed the Nameless Spellbook, and opened his eyes. Oni-sama, is it done? Sakura Madu asked with some uncertainty. Wuming smiled helplessly. How is that possible? Shiro's body is even more broken than I thought. Shiro Amiya used his future Heroic Spirit class card in the parallel world many times, but because he had to send Mayu away, Shiro Amiya gave up the class card. After that, because the Heroic Spirit on the class card was the same person as Shiro Amiya, the class card and Shiro Amiya became synchronized. After losing the class card, Shiro Amiya could still continue to use the power of the Heroic Spirit on the class card. In short, as Shiro Amiya continued to use this power, he began to gradually become a Heroic Spirit. However, for an ordinary person, this synchronize was a bit too much. Shiro Amiya's body couldn't withstand the burden of becoming a Heroic Spirit. The power of the Heroic Spirit was wreaking havoc in Shiro Amiya's body, and if he used this power, it would increase the erosion of the Heroic Spirit. Not only that, but the class card created by Ainsworth also had the power to erode one's heart and even the body. Every card user's heart would be eroded by the Heroic Spirit on the class card. Although it wasn't much, over time, their personality would become more like that of the Heroic Spirit. Perhaps because of the black mud, these class cards had the ability to erode the user's body. This caused Shiro Amiya's body to become quite broken. Wuming told all this to Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief and stared blankly at Shiro Amiya. I really didn't expect Shiro to be able to persevere. Wuming sighed. Senpai. Sakura Madu's eyes began to moisten, which was a sign that tears were about to flow out. Well then, Sakura, please move aside. I'm going to start treating Shiro. Sakura Madu turned her head to look at Wuming in shock. Wuming naturally knew why Sakura Madu was like that. Well, I didn't say that there was no way to save him. I just said that Shiro's body was seriously damaged. Wuming turned his head away and said unnaturally, I was just joking. Who knew that Sakura would fall into my trap? I'm sorry. Well, really, Oni-sama is so annoying. Sakura Madu stopped crying and smiled. If you want to apologize, wait until I completely heal Shiro. Wuming smiled apologetically. Then, Wuming opened the nameless spellbook again. He still held the book in one hand and held the other hand in front of him, pointing in Shiro's direction. Just like before, a large number of palm-sized magic circles appeared on Wuming's palm. The magic circles were interlocked and intertwined. Then, under Wuming's command, they attached themselves to the culture tank. The culture tank that was originally shining shone even more brightly. Sakura Madu looked at this scene worriedly. No matter what, Shiro Amiya's body was seriously injured. After a long and short wait, Wuming stopped the magic circle in his hand and closed the nameless spellbook. The magic circle attached to the culture tank also turned into magic and disappeared. The culture tank also lost its light, and the culture fluid inside quickly disappeared. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Go and see Shiro, Sakura. Wuming smiled at Sakura Madu. Yes, thank you so much, Oni-sama. Thank you so much. Sakura Madu bowed to Wuming again and again. Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Shiro is my brother, and you are my sister-in-law. Looking at Sakura Madu, who was walking towards the culture tank, Wuming said softly, Puchi. With this sound, the culture tank opened. Cough, cough, cough. Shiro Amiya, who had just adapted to the culture fluid, was not used to the air and coughed a few times as soon as he came out. Senpai, are you okay? Sakura Madu rushed forward and supported Shiro Amiya. I'm fine, Sakura. I'm just not used to the air. Now, I feel like all the impurities in my body have been removed. It's very relaxed. Shiro Amiya smiled and then said as he felt his body, Now, no matter how you use that power, it won't have any effect on your body, Shiro. Chapter 287. Thank you, big brother. Shiro Amiya said sincerely. Wuming knew that he had to accept this gratitude no matter what. What are you talking about? You're my brother. Even if you're my sworn brother, there's no need to say thank you between us. Wuming didn't look back. Wuming waved his hand and put the culture tank on the ground. Sakura, go make something delicious for Shiro. Now Shiro's body needs to be nourished. It's best if it's meat. I remember there's still a lot of meat in the freezer. The freezer's location hasn't changed. Shiro knows where it is. Wuming turned around and said to Sakura Madu, who was supporting Shiro Amiya, Yes, I understand. Oni-sama. Then I'll leave with Senpai first. Just as Sakura Madu was about to support Shiro Amiya to leave, Wuming said, Don't forget to leave your rank card behind. I didn't help you adjust your rank card. If your life is in danger because you used your rank card too much, I'm afraid Scholar will fight me to the death. Wuming teased at the end. Sakura Madu blushed. What? Big brother, don't drag me into this. Shiro Amiya smiled helplessly. Then, I'll leave it to you, Oni-sama. Sakura Madu took out a card. On it was a picture of a man wearing a beast horn mask, holding a big sword, pretending to be crazy. This was Sakura Madu's Berserker card. The power inside was the Berserk Lancelot. Okay, that's enough. You guys can go now. Wuming took the card and said casually, Berserk Lancelot? The guy known as the Knight of the Lake will also degenerate into a Berserker? How ironic. Wuming looked at the class card in his hand and smiled uninterestedly. After that, Wuming began to prepare for the purification of the class cards. The class cards that Ainsworth had made all had the negative ability to corrode one's heart and body. Because Shiro Amiya was using the power of his future self, he was almost immune to the psychological damage, but he couldn't avoid the physical damage. That was because the cards had been soaked in the black mud during the manufacturing process. Wuming carefully delved into it and discovered that the interior of the card had the scent of the black mud. Combined with the fact that a job grade card could erode a person's body and mind, this job grade card, including the one Wu Ming had given to Ilya and the others, as well as the one in Blackie's body, had all been created by the Black Mud. However, after taking out Wu Ming and Young Gil, as well as the 7 class cards that had been brought to the world of Ilya, they had all been baptized by the Holy Grail known as Mayu, purifying all of these class cards, and the negative effects that corroded one's heart and body had all disappeared. That was what Wu Ming was doing now. Eliminate all the negative effects that corrode the user's body inside the card. Although Wu Ming was not the Holy Grail, in terms of spiritual purification, Wu Ming's noble phantasm, the nameless spellbook, had a lot of spells in this area. Although the two were somewhat different, it should work. Wu Ming said to himself, "In the past, what if noble and powerful, wise and kind, I will become a double miracle and lead the world to the dawn." Wu Ming directly activated the power of double authority. In this way, the purification of the negative effects of the class cards should be foolproof. After all, it was the power of a god, and a mere class card couldn't compete with it at all. Wu Ming placed the nameless spellbook on the table and opened it casually. Wu Ming took the class card and placed the class card on the nameless spellbook. The class card automatically floated above the nameless spellbook. He didn't even need to chant an incantation. The nameless spellbook automatically activated with Wu Ming's thoughts and began to purify the class cards. As expected, it's because of the Black Mud. Wu Ming felt the analysis of the class card and frowned. "Fortunately, I'm not the same as I used to be after returning to the root." Wu Ming smirked. After that, Wu Ming injected an unknown power into the nameless spellbook. Bzzz. Like an ordinary object touching sulfuric acid, the class card made a sizzling sound. Then, a small black gas floated out of the class card and disappeared into nothingness. Done. Wu Ming grabbed the class card. Excessive amounts of ice would seal the flames in the body and extinguish them. However, for the endless flames, a little bit of ice was nothing. It would melt, evaporate, and turn into nothingness. "Julian must have realized my return," Wu Ming said thoughtfully. "I have to hurry." With the sound of the door closing, Wu Ming left the room. Winterwood City, Big Hollow, Ainsworth Castle. A sloppy middle-aged man with messy hair and thin clothes stood at the highest point of the castle, looking at the scenery in the distance. If one looked closely, one would find that the man's eyes were filled with fanaticism and darkness. Thought this was the sound of a person half kneeling on the ground. The man didn't turn his head and spoke directly. "It seems like you've lost completely, Angelica Beatrice," the man said with a deep feeling. However, no matter how one listened, one could tell that the owner of the voice was not in a good mood. "I'm sorry, Master Darius. We've failed," Angelica said calmly. She was not upset or worried about the failure of the mission. That was right. These two people were Angelica and Beatrice, who Wu Ming thought had no chance of surviving. Although both of them survived Wu Ming's attack, Beatrice was worried about whether she could survive the attack of Master Ainsworth. Beatrice, who was beside Angelica, didn't dare to speak. Beatrice was just like Angelica, half kneeling on the ground, but she didn't say a word. After all, Beatrice was not a pure puppet. She accepted the rank card to become Ainsworth's combat power voluntarily. Because of the effect of Hercules' noble phantasm, Beatrice only fell into a state of suspended animation, so she was not brainwashed by Darius. He did not want those who died to be deprived of emotions and placed on puppets. After all, the other party really volunteered to help him, so there was no need to spend energy to convert them. "Mama, I can't blame you. I didn't expect Hyunryong to really resurrect beside our princess," Darius said with joy. "The evil dragon that kidnapped the princess. How can a mere soldier bring the princess back? This needs to be done by a brave prince. What do you think?" "Ha ha 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 ha. Ha ha." Looking at Darius, who was laughing like a lunatic, Angelica and Beatrice did not speak anymore. One felt that there was no need to speak, and the other was too scared to speak. For a moment, Darius stopped laughing, then said calmly to Angelica, "Inform those puppets that the enemy is coming." Yes, Master Darius. Chapter 288. On the same day, Wuming helped Mayu and Ilya learn how to use Dream Summon install. He also guided Xiaohei while he was at it. Originally, this task should have been given to Shiro Amiya. However, Sakura Madu was worried that Shiro Amiya wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Even the food was personally delivered by Sakura Madu to Shiro Amiya's room. According to Wuming's deduction, he found out that Shiro Amiya was also being fed by Sakura Madu. After all, Wuming could be considered as half a mentor to Shiro Amiya. Although he couldn't use the moves of his disciple, he could still give some pointers to Xiaohei. Subsequently, Xiaohei successfully developed a skill that could be considered a new ability, which made Xiaohei very excited. After that, Wuming made glutinous rice balls for the three of them, making 3 smiling faces and 3 different types of laughter accompany Wuming. After that, Wuming took some free time to find Rin, Enbin, and Luvia. Wuming brought them to the room in the center of the Shua Suki residence and folded the space to reveal the control room. After seeing all this, the people who were originally interested in the control room, including Rin, Enbin, and Luvia, were all shocked. Although this isn't a secret, the control room is also the core of my magic workshop. You two must be obedient and don't cause any trouble. This was Wuming's advice to Rin, Enbin, and Luvia, whose eyes were shining when they saw the control room. Okay, of course, Wuming wouldn't easily believe that the two wouldn't drop the ball at a critical moment. Therefore, Wuming left Collis behind as an assistant to Rin, Enbin, and Luvia. In addition to supervising Rin, Enbin, and Luvia, Collis had another important task, which was to assist the two in the construction of the magic workshop. After all, this was Kenzaki's shrine. Even if Wuming simplified it to modern technology, the two of them wouldn't be able to learn how to use it in a single day. That night, after dinner, everyone gathered in the conference room again. As usual, Wuming sat at the head of the table, while the others sat on either side of him. Young Gil sat in the middle. Everyone, go to sleep later and conserve your strength. Angelica and Beatrice did not come back. Ainsworth must be able to infer that I am back. Maybe the other party will attack directly regardless of the safety of the Winterwood citizens. Directly launch an attack. Isn't magic supposed to be hidden and not be known to ordinary people? Will Ainsworth really break this rule? Ilya had been in the magic world for a long time, so she already understood a lot of these rules. Although this world had experienced the experience of almost being destroyed, with the help of Zelik, this world successfully escaped from destruction. Even so, the world's population had decreased to a certain extent, and even now, Winterwood City had not fully recovered to its former prosperity. But the people were not afraid. It was just that the population base had decreased, and they still continue to live. Ainsworth's goal is the Holy Grail. Let's not talk about whether they know that May came back with me. With Ainsworth's idea, as long as they get rid of me, no one can stop them from getting the Holy Grail. Wuming explained, when this world was gradually approaching destruction, the magicians from all over the world were the first victims. As the saying goes, if the sky falls, the tall man will hold it up. After the magicians lost a lot of their lives, Zelik spent a lot of effort to resolve the crisis of this world. As for what the crisis was, Wuming didn't know, nor was he interested in knowing. He only knew that because of the decrease in magicians, the Ainsworth family on the other side of the world had become the local tyrant. This was also the reason why the large pit on the side of Winterwood City had not been repaired for 5 years. I can only say that we can't eliminate the possibility of an attack at night. After all, I have already discovered that they are monitoring this place. Wuming said calmly, let's leave it at that for the time being. Everyone go to sleep. If nothing unexpected happens, we will attack Ainsworth tomorrow morning. After Wuming finished speaking, everyone looked at each other and nodded. Night fell, and Wuming looked in the direction of Ainsworth. With a golden light, young Gil appeared beside Wuming. Why are you here? Good boy, you still need to sleep. Wuming looked at young Gil casually. Ha ha, teacher is so gentle. Wuming's words made young Gil laugh. I'm actually here to tell you that I sense the aura of my upper body. As soon as young Gil said that, Wu Ming's body trembled, but he reacted quickly. Both of them came back alive? They're so lucky. Wu Ming squinted his eyes and looked at young Gil. Then, I'll give you your upper body. How about that? Young Jill, on the other hand, smiled gently. Teacher, you must be joking. Although it's my lower body, it has most of my relics. Of course, I know how powerful I am. You want your lower body, right, Gil? Wu Ming suddenly said. Yes, of course. Of course, I want to be complete. Young Gil said, as if it was a matter of course. Now, I suddenly realized that you were the most difficult to deal with when you were young. Wu Ming suddenly sighed. He relaxed his aura that was always ready. As if he was on vacation, Wu Ming lay on the roof. After becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was extremely arrogant and complacent. Before becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was gentle and elegant. He always kept his cool. Compared to the guy in front of him, who always had a smile and was always calm, Wu Ming felt that the arrogant and complacent Gilgamesh was easier to talk to. I really hate myself after growing up. I really don't understand why I became like that. Young Gil also put down his smile and returned to his original posture. He leaned against Wu Ming and sat down. Really? Wouldn't it have been better if you were like this earlier? You made both of us so troublesome. Young Gil was like a real child as he casually said to Wu Ming. Who told you to stare at Meiyu so aggressively from the beginning, you idiot? Wu Ming said as he cursed and hit young Gil's head. I can't help it. After all, my heart has always wanted to obtain the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is right in front of me. How could I give it up? After all, Wu Ming did not use much strength. Young Gil only touched his head symbolically and then chatted with Wu Ming. That's right. Although the two of them had a good relationship as master and disciple, they always seemed to treat each other as outsiders. That was because both of them were pretending. Then, what made you give up on Meiyu? Wu Ming asked young Gil in a tone that said he already knew the answer. You really have a bad taste. You clearly know the reason, yet you still ask me. Young Gil looked helplessly at Wu Ming. Wu Ming did not mind young Gil's words. He smiled and looked at the sky without saying anything. That's right. No matter what, Wu Ming was like Gilgamesh's adoptive father. Even if it was the Gilgamesh of the parallel world, how could Wu Ming not understand him? Chapter 289. As early as when Wu Ming and young Gil noticed that there were enemies coming to the parallel world, young Gil had already noticed that half of his body was missing. Originally, I just wanted to destroy them in another world. That way, your body wouldn't be able to come back. Wu Ming looked at the sky and confessed to young Gil. Of course I know. You were there at that time. You definitely wouldn't allow me to get my body back, so I didn't ask for much. Young Gil helplessly waved his hand. But they came back alive. Isn't this what people often say about fate? That's it. I'll help you get your body back. You're not allowed to have any ideas about Meiyu and the others. Wu Ming glanced at young Gil. In modern terms, you're really a lolicon. Young Gil laughed heartily. That's it. Don't you want the Holy Grail? I'll give you one. Suddenly, Wu Ming said, Huh? You don't let me have any ideas about Sister Meiyu and the others, but you want to give me the Holy Grail? So, where's the Holy Grail that you want to give me? Young Gil was puzzled. You also know that since the fall of the Uruk dynasty, I didn't die. Wu Ming did not directly tell young Gil where the Holy Grail was. Instead, he talked about his own experience with young Gil. I once went to a world. In that world, there was a different kind of Holy Grail war. Oh, a different kind of Holy Grail war. Young Gil showed great interest. Yes, it was a Holy Grail war with 14 servants. The black side and the red side each had 7 servants. The black side launched a defensive battle in order to hold the Holy Grail that was already in their hands. The red side launched a siege in order to compete for the Holy Grail that was protected by the black side. Wu Ming continued to look at the starry sky and spoke leisurely without turning his head. First, Black Saber committed suicide, and Red's Berserker was captured. Then, Black's rider rebelled with an android and became neutral. Red Saber left the main force, and Black's assassin went out of control. Together with the additional supervisor ruler and the cheating servant ruler who survived the previous Holy Grail war, They launched an unprecedented Holy Grail war. Uh-huh, that sounds like a pretty good show. Even I want to see these clowns. Young Gil laughed with great interest. And then, who took the Holy Grail in the end? Young Gil asked impatiently. Wu-Ming smiled at this. Of course it's me, your teacher. Ah, how I knew it. In this world, only the two of us are qualified to possess the Holy Grail. Those clowns are really overestimating themselves. Young Gil wiped the tears from his laughter and looked at Wu-Ming apologetically. Sorry, teacher, it's really funny. So, do you mean to give me the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War? I originally thought so, but Wu-Ming said slowly. But I regret it, my disciple. As if he was playing with young Gil, Wu-Ming said happily. Is that so? It's similar to what I guessed, but it doesn't matter. Young Gil, who originally had a desire for the Holy Grail, now seemed to have entered sage mode. Young Gil also lay down next to Wu-Ming. The Holy Grail is just a desire. I'm now interested in the Holy Grail War you mentioned. When I get back my real body, I'll go to the parallel world to try my luck and see if I can encounter it. After all, there are parallel worlds where the 14 Nights War happened. Even if you're my teacher, I won't accept your charity, young Gil said with a domineering tone. That's right. In young Gil's view, the so-called cooperation now was just young Gil's one-sided weakness. Even if he got back his real body and recovered all his strength, Gilgamesh and Hyunryong could still fight to a draw. In this way, the Holy Grail was charity. You really haven't changed, Gil. Wu-Ming touched young Gil's head and said with some surprise. What do you mean haven't changed? This king has never changed, okay. Young Gil slapped Wu-Ming's hand away in disdain. Do you think Ainsworth will come tonight? Wu-Ming suddenly asked. Isn't that obvious? Young Gil said with some disdain. The clowns are always the first to appear, teacher. Wu-Ming and young Gil sat up and looked at the street not far from the Shuayu residence. A black figure flashed from there. Assassin, it seems that the other party can't wait. It seems that this is the other party's vanguard. Wu-Ming raised his arm and slid it gently, and a screen appeared in front of Wu-Ming. On the screen, the assassin in a black robe and a skull mask was constantly moving toward here. Vanguard? I think it's cannon fodder. Young Gil smiled. Hassan, I just don't know which Hassan it is, but it doesn't matter. Wu-Ming obviously recognized the true identity of this assassin. It couldn't be helped. Hassan was too easy to recognize. Maybe it's one of the dozen Hassans. It doesn't matter. After all, it's just a clown among clowns. Young Gil waved his hand casually. You're right. Wu-Ming smiled as well. At that moment, Hassan, who was approaching the Shuayu residence, suddenly stopped and dodged to the side. However, a sharp arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot at the assassin, piercing through his head. Somewhere in the Shuayu residence, a transparent ripple appeared and disappeared. Needless to say, the arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot out from the transparent ripple. Then, the assassin collapsed on the ground. The magic in his body began to burn, and eventually, he turned into an automaton. A card fell on the ground, but strangely, the card turned into ashes along with the user and disappeared with the wind. It seems like this is a one-time use card. Has Ainsworth learned his lesson? Wu-Ming flew up and said to young Gil. So, Gil, can you help me call everyone? Of course, teacher. Young Gil disappeared from the roof with a flash of golden particles. Wu-Ming came to the courtyard of the Shuayu residence and inserted one hand into the ground. Space fold expand. After a while, Elia was woken up by Meiyu and put on her clothes. Meiyu, are the enemies here? Ilya rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Meiyu. Yes, Sister Rin asked me to wake you up. They have all gathered. Brother Wu-Ming found the enemy's tracks. We have to prepare in advance. After that, Meiyu pulled Ilya toward the courtyard of the Shuayu residence. Well, why do they have to come at this time? Damn it, it's like sleeping. Meiyu turned her head and comforted Ilya. Don't worry, Ilya. Brother Wu-Ming is here. When the preparations are complete, you can go and sleep for a while. I will call you again. No need, Meiyu. After all, the enemy has already attacked. It's better to be serious. Ilya waved her hand awkwardly. Speaking of which, why haven't we reached the end after walking for so long? May you have been pulling Ilya for a while. Ilya discovered that they still hadn't reached the courtyard. Could it be ghosts? Ilya's expression instantly became flustered. Unfortunately, Ilya's whimsical theory was denied. No, it's Wuming who expanded the folded space of the Shuayu residence. That's why we haven't reached the end after walking for so long. Meiyu shook her head. That's right, Ilya-chan. You are obviously a magical girl. How can you be afraid of ghosts? With me here, Ilya-chan can catch ghosts. Ruby's sleepy voice came out from Ilya's hair. You lazy bug. It's time to get up. Stop talking. Ilya ridiculed Ruby. Sister, come out quickly. The enemy has arrived. Sapphire, who had already come out from Mayo's hair, floated behind Ilya's head and said to Ruby hidden in her hair. Yes, I'll come out now. Ruby said somewhat unwillingly. We're here. Mayu stopped and pushed open the door to the courtyard. This is... Chapter 290. Ilya's eyes widened when she saw the scene in the courtyard. She was speechless. The courtyard that was originally several dozen square meters had exceeded Ilya's calculations. It was so big that she couldn't even see the end. Ilya estimated that it was several thousand square meters. In this several thousand square meters courtyard, there were huge steel golems that were more than 3 meters tall. They were like an orderly army that was arranged in an orderly manner. These steel puppets were like high-tech robots. Just one of them was enough for Ilya to sense danger, not to mention the countless puppets in the courtyard. These are... Ilya didn't dare to speak. Mayu, Ilya, why are you two so late? We're just waiting for you two. Little Black waved at Ilya and Mayu, who had just arrived. Ilya and Mayu hurriedly ran over. Sorry, Little Black. The space inside the house after unfolding the spatial folding is a little large. I spent some time bringing Ilya. Mayu apologized to Little Black. You don't have to apologize for such a small matter. Speaking of which, could it be that Ilya was lazing in bed and couldn't get up? That's why you're late, right? Little Black looked at Ilya with a gaze that seemed to see through everything. How is that possible? Little Black, why would I laze in bed? Ilya touched the back of her head and laughed. In fact, Little Black wasn't wrong. Is that so? Don't forget that we used to be one body. I basically know all your habits, Ilya. Wait a minute, I didn't. Little Black's words caused Ilya to stutter and become speechless. Stop fooling around, you two. Let's get down to business. Rin Enbin said to the two who were teasing and being teased. He instantly glared at Little Black. Blackie, on the other hand, turned his head away while whistling. Everyone looked at Wuming attentively. Beside Wuming, who had his eyes closed, a black teleportation door opened. Another steel golem walked out. It walked to a fixed position and stood there steadily. Then, Wuming opened his eyes. That should be enough. Then, Wuming began to chant. Under the night sky, under the brilliance of the light, form an ancient covenant with me. Here, thy body belongs to us, and we govern thy body. Gods of darkness and light, form a covenant here. As the words were uttered, the ground of the lunar manor began to change. First, it was mixed with a trace of golden light. Then, like a swamp, the ground slowly swallowed the countless iron golems standing on the ground. Only when all the steel golems had disappeared did the earth return to its original state. Were all these steel men swallowed by the earth? Ilya was a little surprised. Don't worry. Wuming walked up to Ilya and rubbed her little head. The color of the earth just now was the effect of my noble phantasm. Now they're staying in my noble phantasm, waiting for my summons. That's right. What Wuming just used was one of the uses of his kin avatar. Originally, that avatar was originally Mecker's ability to summon locusts to devour everything. Combined with Wuming's own evolution, that ability became the ability to summon his avatar. But even if it evolved, the original ability would not disappear, and it still had the effect of summoning creatures. However, Because Wu-Ming and the locust's attributes were not compatible, there was nothing in Wu-Ming's kin space. That required Wu-Ming to find creatures who volunteered to be Wu-Ming's summoned creatures to fill in the space. Compared to living creatures with flesh and blood, Wu-Ming was more inclined to these golems without self-consciousness. That was what happened just now. Wu-Ming summoned the strongest steel golem in Nazalik's kin space. After entering Wu-Ming's noble phantasm, those steel golems would automatically become Wu-Ming summoned creatures because they were unconscious. As long as Wu-Ming activated his dependent incarnation and didn't transmit his aura to that incarnation, then all those magic puppets would have the power to restrain the black mud. Of course, the other side would also have the power to restrain this side. In short, both sides restrained each other. Let's go. Everyone, the other side has begun to move. In order to avoid affecting the city, I decided to attack the other side's base directly. Everyone nodded. Immediately afterward, Wu-Ming, Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, Gil, and Bazette left Suki House together. Rin and Osaka, Luvia, Ilya, Mayu, and Xiaohei stayed in Suki House. Let's go, Ms. Rin, Ms. Luvia. Let's quickly activate the Master's Temple and go to the other side's base. Kala suddenly appeared behind Rin in Osaka and Luvia without any warning and said, Rin and Osaka and Luvia were both startled. After seeing Kalas, who was of the same race as Ruby and Sapphire, they both calmed down. I know, let's go. It's improper to scare a lady. Rin and Osaka and Luvia complained and went to the control room. Then let's go and prepare. Xiaohei began to move. Wait a minute, Blackie. Didn't Brother Wu-Ming tell us to stay here obediently? Ilya looked at Blackie, wanted to say something, but hesitating. Xiaohei turned his head away with a look of disdain. Should I say that you're a fool or an idiot? Big Brother did tell us to stay here as obediently as possible, but there are always accidents. We have to be prepared. If Big Brother and the others can't win for a while, we can go and help. Xiaohei turned his head and looked at Mayu. Mayu would agree with me. Mayu, who didn't expect Xiaohei to ask her, was startled at first, but then she reacted. It's not impossible to prepare a little. Back then, when Wu-Ming asked the three of them to stay in Suki House, Mayu was still a little angry. She became a magical girl. Other than to collect class cards, she also wanted to increase her power and help Wu-Ming. Although Mayu was a good girl, good girls also had a stubborn side. Ilya, let's go and prepare, just in case. Looking at Mayu's determined eyes, Ilya didn't know what to do and nodded. Then, all right, let's go. If we help Big Brother later, we can ask for a reward. Xiaohei pushed the two of them and started to tempt them. Xiaohei, don't push me away. Reward. Ignoring Ilya's cry of surprise, Xiaohei saw that Mayu had fallen into his trap and immediately spoke. That's right. Don't you want Big Brother to kiss you? I missed that night very much. As he spoke, Xiaohei pretended to be seductive and tempted the two of them. That night, Mayu was stunned. Not pure. Xiaohei, you're a girl. You have to be reserved, understand? Yes. Let's go. Chapter 291. Outside the Winterwood City Pit, Wu-Ming and his group came here. Let's stop here for the time being. Wu-Ming waved his hand and motioned for the group to stop moving forward. So, do we need to attack directly, teacher? Young Gil put his hands behind his head and said in a relaxed and casual tone, No need. The other party has already noticed that we are here. Wu-Ming shook his head. They're already at the door. How can the other party not notice that someone is coming? Wu-Ming looked at the empty pit with a sarcastic expression. Still so pretentious. Ainsworth, is displacement magic really so omnipotent? Just after Wu-Ming finished speaking, there was a slight change in the center of the big pit. Accompanied by spatial fluctuations, figures came out of the ripples one by one. Darius led Angelica, Beatrice, and a few strangers who had no consciousness in their eyes to walk out. Long time no see, Mr. Wu-Ming. Darius greeted Wu-Ming gently. Julian is not here? Shiro Amiya, saw that Julian was not among the people who came out of the ripples and spoke subconsciously. Calm down, Shiro. I will tell you about Julian later. Wu Ming knew that although Julian had already broken up with Wei Gong Shiro, the things that happened between the two in the school before and the friendship that developed between them were all real. With Shiro Amiya's character, it was difficult for him to completely let go of Julian. After Shiro Amiya heard Wu Ming's words, he nodded and said nothing. He knew that this was a battlefield now. Looking back, Wu Ming looked at Darius. Well, long time no see, Darius. Wu Ming also responded gently with a smile. People who didn't know might think that the two were best friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. This is really fate. I remember the last time we met like this. Darius touched his chin with one hand and supported the hand that was touching his chin with the other hand as he thought carefully. You are really forgetful, Darius. The one who met me was your son, Julian Ainsworth. Yes, look at my memory, haha. In the face of Wu Ming's mistake, Darius clenched one fist and punched the other hand with a look of, I forgot to thank you for the reminder. After laughing for a moment, Darius said, Then, the greetings are almost done. After Darius finished speaking, the few people behind him walked in front of Darius in unison. Their eyes were lifeless like robots. Same to you. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Come and see my latest card, Hyunryong, Sama. Darius bowed deeply to Wu Ming like a noble. However, to be honest, it was really disgusting. Install Dream Summon. Each of the dolls took out a class card and activated Dream Summoning. They stuck the class card on their bodies. Boom! Following their Dream Summon, a large amount of magical power erupted and impacted the surroundings. Every golem was wrapped in a huge pillar of light. The tornadoes created by the magic pillars kept blowing in the direction of Wu Ming and the others. Wu Ming and the others' clothes fluttered. Brother, Shiro Amiya took a step forward and said to Wu Ming with a serious expression, Don't worry, Shiro. Wu Ming stopped Shiro Amiya, who was a little emotional, and said, Let's see what the other party is up to. In fact, Wu Ming was worried that Darius had made a few class cards with special abilities. After all, the level of a noble phantasm was not the most important thing, but whether it could restrain a noble phantasm. Many times, a low-level noble phantasm could restrain many high-level noble phantasms. It was just like the relationship between Shakespeare and Joan of Arc in the Battle of 14 Nights that Wu Ming participated in. Shakespeare said it himself, We don't have the ability to fight. We can only pick up a pen and write to record this tragedy. She didn't know magic at all. She didn't have any skill in making props, and she could only build her own study room. She was a third-rate servant with no actual combat ability, but she was able to restrain Joan of Arc by relying on her noble phantasm. There should be a thunderous applause here. Fortunately, the aftermath of the battle between Wu Ming and Karna affected Shakespeare and Joan of Arc at that time. Otherwise, it would be terrible. However, Wu Ming estimated that with Joan of Arc's EX level of magical power, coupled with her unusually strong spirit. Having said that, faith was really a scary thing. For faith, Tian Chao lived for 60 years. For faith, Joan of Arc endured the first few rounds of spiritual destruction before Wu Ming broke Shakespeare's noble phantasm. Sure enough, faith was the way to go. Ahem, let's get back to the topic. Moreover, not only noble phantasms, but even servants had restraints. If Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang appeared in the same Holy Grail War, Zhou Yu would be restrained by Zhuge Liang. The noble phantasm was sublimated from the legends of his life, so the cause of Zhou Yu's death, which was being controlled by Zhuge Liang, would definitely accompany him. Just like Karen's death rate when encountering something related to poison, it would greatly increase. Although Wu Ming didn't think that anyone could restrain him, it was difficult to guarantee that Shiro Amiya and the others would not be restrained. Don't worry, everyone. These cards are not targeted at your noble phantasm. These are just cannon fodder used in the battle. Darius saw the concerns of Wu Ming and the others, so he didn't care about the card-using puppets and spoke directly. You might as well send out your black mud servant army. A group of guys without self-awareness, there's nothing to worry about. Wu Ming laughed. Wu-Ming was not underestimating the enemy. That was the truth. No matter what they are, just wash them all away. God says humans are sinful. God says humans need to be purified. So, send a monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will grant equal relief. As the spirit of speech finished speaking, the sky above Darius and the others seemed to be torn apart, and a hole was broken in space. Countless streams of water gushed out from this gap. However, when it was about to touch Darius and the others, a large purple magic array appeared and caught the water. Then, a purple virtual frame gap appeared above Wu-Ming and the others. The water that Wu-Ming summoned was used by Darius in turn, directly replacing the space of 2 places. I have to say, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really the pinnacle of magic. Wu-Ming praised the displacement magic. Thank you for your praise. Darius seemed to be proud of it and bowed to Wu-Ming again. But my things are not so easy to control. The water that fell on Wu-Ming and the others automatically dispersed when it was about to touch Wu-Ming and the others. It fell to the ground and slowly flowed into the big pit. Because Wu-Ming and the others were on a higher ground and Darius and the others were on a lower ground, the water naturally flowed into the big pit. It seems that the substitution magic isn't working anymore. Darius laughed self-deprecatingly. Chapter 292. At this moment, the inside of the big pit in Winterwood City was filled with water. Only Wu-Ming and the others were at the top of the big pit, and Darius and the others were at the center of the big pit, protected by displacement magic. Oh, Hyunryong, Sama, I didn't expect you to have such a godlike ability. Did you hide it last time? Darius said with a little excitement. Sorry, I didn't hide it. It's okay to tell you. This is a new ability I got from killing the gods of other worlds. Wu-Ming answered Darius's question quite casually. God, is that true, big brother? Wei Gongshi looked at his elder brother with an even more unusual gaze. Not only was Wei Gongshi laying like this, even Tong Ying and Bizet had a doubtful look on their faces. Only young Gil was quite excited. Good job, sensei. When will you kill those gods of Sumer mythology? Young Jill said such terrifying words with his beautiful face. Wu-Ming didn't say anything about it. Not only Wu-Ming knew, but young Gil also knew that the original gods were forced to enter a higher dimension after Kanagami's generation, and they could no longer interfere with the operation of the main world. In a sense, those gods were dead and killed by the world. Since Hyunryong, Sama has already made his move, then we can't be weak. With that said, Darius waved his hand, and one of the people who had completed the transformation using the class card raised the bow in his hand. The bow in his hand was very simple, and he was wearing a simple leather armor. He looked abnormally energetic, but his eyes, which recalled the soul of a person, were very turbid. The puppet man received Darius's command, and like a machine, he drew the bow, an arrow, and aimed at the sky. Stella, the puppet man said softly without emotion, then released the bowstring, and the arrow flew to the sky. PFFF. After shooting the arrow, the man's body shattered into pieces. Then he turned into a broken automaton, and an archer class card turned into ashes. Is it a relic that will be thrown away once it's used? Wu-Ming could tell that his opponent had to sacrifice himself to use the relic. As expected of Ainsworth, such a relic was usually quite powerful. Wu-Ming raised his head to look at the arrow. After reaching the highest point, the arrow began to descend. As it descended, the power of the arrow increased bit by bit. With Wu-Ming's senses, he could tell that once the arrow landed on the ground, it would explode with boundless power that could tear the earth apart. Shiro, use Ro Ajax to protect the two of them. Wu-Ming made a prompt decision and asked Shiro Amiya to use his defensive relic. I don't need to worry about you. Then, Wu-Ming looked at young Gil. Of course, at least I still have the ability to protect myself. Young Gil flicked his hair and waved his hand casually. That's it then. Immediately, Wu-Ming took a step forward. Lightning, Lightning, lightning. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 1,000 and 10,000 with 10,000. Now, for me, who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and give me divine power. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. On the Lord's day, the sinner shall be punished. Crush his back, dig out his tendons, bones, hair, and brain, and trample on his blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot get close to the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. In an instant, Wu Ming canceled his flood incarnation and activated his thunder god incarnation and annihilation incarnation. Beep, beep, beep. Wu Ming's body began to flicker with red lightning that was so red it was frightening. Actually, if you dodge now, you should be able to avoid this noble phantasm. Young Gil kindly reminded him. That made Wu Ming laugh. If it's you, will you dodge it? Wu Ming asked. Of course not. As a king, there's no need to dodge an unknown clown's noble phantasm. Young Gil shook his head. I'm the same, my disciple. As the teacher of the ancient king, Wu Ming also had a trace of similarity with Gilgamesh. Wu Ming would directly trigger certain things that could be avoided. The unknown was what Wu Ming had always been searching for. That was also one of the points. However, Wu Ming was not an enemy that he would fight head-on. Otherwise, in Uruk, Wu Ming would not have left with Enkidu, but Wu Ming would have fought directly. At that time, although Wu Ming had not yet grown up and his talent and physical fitness as the Root Dragon were still very poor, Wu Ming could still fight against these gods at the cost of his vitality. After all, Wu Ming was also the Root Dragon, and he had the strength to do so. In less than 50 years, Wu Ming was able to successfully awaken the Root Dragon's body from an ordinary boy to the point where he could kill gods. That was all thanks to the Root Dragon's bloodline. That was both a price and a benefit. They sacrificed the strength that other higher life forms were born with in exchange for unprecedented growth in just 50 or even 40 years. This might be the reason why the origin of origins, dragons were able to become peak existences that roamed the various worlds. However, Wu Ming seemed to have added the convenience provided by the Root Dragon's bloodline to his luck. In addition, Wu Ming did not dodge for the sake of Winterwood City. Judging by Wu Ming's naked eye, the arrow that was about to fall from the sky definitely had the power to blow up Winterwood City. Not to mention that Rindosaka and the others were still in Winterwood City. Wu Ming still had the attitude of saving the ordinary people if he could. If he was rich, he would help the world. If he was poor, he would take care of himself. That was the truth. Since I can't dodge, then I'll just melt this arrow that's comparable to a meteor. With that said, Wu Ming's lightning burst out and condensed into a lightning beam. It will crush all enemies and enmity, both humans and demons. Wu Ming chanted the Thunder God's Incarnation's enhancement rune, which was a special spirit that could instantly enhance the power of the incarnation. This is my body. Boom! The red lightning pillar rushed straight towards the huge source of mana that was descending from the sky. When the two collided, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The white light covered everything, leaving only the residual sound of the explosion and the violent wind caused by the collision of the authority and the noble phantasm. Chapter 293. When the light gradually disappeared, everyone opened their eyes. The strong hurricane caused by the collision of the relics caused the dust in the air to scatter. As the two relics collided and exploded in mid-air, it did not affect Winterwood City much. However, some of the flowers on the balcony and the signs on the street were blown off. Wu Ming used his magic to disperse the dust that was wrapped around his body. Behind Wu Ming, a purplish-red cherry blossom shield appeared in the shape of a ball, protecting the people inside. The cherry blossom shield turned into pure magic and dissipated, revealing Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette. As for young Gil, he did not need anyone to protect him. Are you guys okay? Wu Ming turned around and asked. We're fine. What about you, big brother? Just now, the Roe Ajax didn't manage to protect you. Although it was said that it did not protect him, It was actually Wuming's request. If everyone lost their vision, it would be dangerous. Moreover, Wuming also needed to deal with any attacks that might come back other than Stella, which was why he wasn't protected by the 7 blazing circles, row Ajax. My relic and the opponent's relic canceled each other out. The only thing that was generated was a super strong storm. This wind is nothing to me. Wuming waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. If it was just the gust of wind that was stirred up just now, that little bit of power was nothing to Wuming. That was a terrifying attack just now. Bazette said with lingering fear. That's right. If the attack just now landed, let's not talk about whether I could protect you guys. The entire Winterwood City would disappear. Shiro Amiya agreed. What? What is that? At that moment, Sakura Madu suddenly pointed to the front and asked. Shiro Amiya and Bazette also looked to the front. Wuming was the first to discover it. A semicircular defensive wall, like an ice castle, covered the original location of Darius and the others. After the light produced by the explosion disappeared, Wuming discovered this water-blue ice prison that did not match the sand and dust on a battlefield. Wuming raised his eyebrows and stretched his hand to the side. The golden ripples wrapped around Wuming's right arm. Then, as if he was holding on to something, Wuming suddenly pulled his hand out of the golden ripples. The silver spear of the world tree appeared in Wuming's hand. Yggdrasil's vines were quite effective against the tortoise shell. My Yggdrasil, along with the activation of the relic, the Yggdrasil spear was covered in green. Green vines grew from the body of the spear to the tip of the spear. Wuming maintained Yggdrasil's real name liberation status and changed his posture into a throwing position. He aimed at the ice prison and threw it hard. Show dash. Yggdrasil penetrated the atmosphere and made a sound that broke through the sound barrier. Boom! The ice prison that the World Tree Divine Spear had fiercely attached to exploded violently, and countless vines grew out of the ice prison in a frenzy. A big hole was broken in the ice prison. Swish, swish, swish. Yggdrasil, who completed the task, returned to Wuming's hand and was firmly grasped by Wuming. Wuming put Yggdrasil back into the golden ripples and looked at Darius and the others in the ice prison. Your tortoiseshell is not very good, Darius. Ha ha ha. Hyunryong, Sama, you must be joking. Your spear has the ability to break through this relic. Darius was right. If one looked carefully, the vines triggered by Wuming's relic were all from the inside of the ice prison. No, it should be from the ice of the ice prison to the outside, just like a plant bud growing out of a stone. When Darius touched the relic, the ice prison turned into a rank card, and he held it in his hand. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace. That's the name of this relic. What do you think? Not bad, right? Darius took the class card and showed it to Wuming and the others. Unfortunately, the class card did not have a class, nor any picture. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace? Young Gil frowned. What's wrong, Gil? Wuming looked at young Gil. In my memories and my treasury, there is no such precious artifact. Wuming certainly understood what young Gil meant. As the ancient king, Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic. As long as there was a relic that appeared before, it could be found in Gilgamesh's treasury. However, young Jill said that she had never heard of this 301-second Eternal Ice Palace, which was quite thought-provoking. It may also happen to be a relic that was not included in my Gate of Babylon, but the probability is somewhat unbelievable. Although the Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic, it was inevitable that there would be some left out. Almost all of them meant that it was not absolute. It was very likely that this relic was not included in Gilgamesh's treasury. But I don't believe that he would have a noble artifact that you don't have in your Gate of Babylon. Wuming looked at Darius again, who had a smile on his face. Maybe this is a relic that Darius created himself. Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette all widened their eyes. Created his own relic. Is this really possible for modern people? Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief. Well, after all, the one next to you has the ability to create relic. Wuming pointed at Bazette. Is Ms. Bazette so powerful? Sakura Madu looked at Bizet in surprise. Shiro Amiya also looked at this rather cold partner of his in a new light. Although I can create the backlight sword, it is entirely because I am the descendant of the Inheritance Germ Protector family. Compared to your man who has begun to heroic spirit, I am still far behind. Bizet closed her eyes and said calmly to Sakura Madu. On the other hand, Tong Ying and Wei Gongshiro's faces turned red. Wu Ming did not pay attention to the conversation between Shiro Amiya and the others. Instead, he looked at Darius, who had a new move. Well, since Sir Virtuous Dragon was able to break this precious artifact so easily, then these few cards are just showing off in front of an expert. As he spoke, Darius took out 2 more job rank cards without any pictures. Next, let's start the real stage performance, Hyunryong Sama. After that, Darius walked into the transparent ripple behind him. Coincidentally, a large amount of black mud was constantly emerging from the transparent ripple. ZZ, Wu Ming, I've connected. Suddenly, a virtual screen appeared next to Wu Ming. On the screen were Kalis, Rin Enbin, and Livia, whose cheeks were red and swollen. Chapter 294. What did you two do just now? Wu Ming asked curiously when he saw that their cheeks were a little red. Nothing. Yeah. Rin and Osaka and Livia waved their hands in a panic, then stared at each other fiercely. How could they say that they were slapped by each other because they were fighting for the master position? Kalis bowed to Wu Ming. Master, due to the sudden explosion of a large amount of magic, our communication was temporarily disrupted, but it's fine now. Wu Ming nodded. The large amount of magic that Kalis was talking about should be the chaos caused by the collision of the relics. We're on our way to your location. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Okay, I understand. Kalis, remember to keep an eye on these two. Don't let them cause any trouble. Wu Ming was still worried about Rin and Osaka and Livia. Yes, master. Kalis then turned off the communication. Wu Ming looked once again at the black mud that had already begun to spread, and at the few card users who were already rushing over. Shiro, Sakura, Bizet, start attacking the enemy. Remember not to touch the black mud, and protect yourselves first. Wu Ming noticed that the moment the black mud appeared, except for the puppets that had no self-consciousness, Angelica and Beatrice used displacement magic to separate their feet from the black mud. As for the puppets standing on the black mud, their bodies began to undergo some black changes. There was no doubt that the corrosive power of the black mud had reached its peak. Wu Ming could feel that the black mud that Julian released last time was nothing compared to this black mud. Understood. Bizet responded, and without waiting for Wu Ming to finish, he rushed toward the attacking enemies. Wu Ming raised his eyebrows, feeling helpless. You guys go too. Okay, big brother Oniisa. After that, Shiro Amiya covered his body with magic and turned into Amiya's costume. Sakura Madu took out the card that Wu Ming adjusted before and used Dream Summoning. Install Dream Summoning. The lower half of her body was a normal black armor, but the upper half of her body was a black armor that could only cover her chest. A black mask with only a slit covered her face, and a few lines that looked like electronic cables extended out from behind Midori Sakura. Red mana patterns also wrapped around his body. Even his black armor and mask had red mana patterns on them. Because of Wu Ming's modification, the black armor was slightly blue, and it didn't have the arrogance of Berserker. It was very suitable for Sakura Madu, a woman like Sakura Madu, to use it, and it could reflect Sakura Madu's beauty. Let's go together, senpai. Sakura Madu smiled at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya reacted, but he didn't blush or even feel embarrassed, but he smiled and nodded. Let's go together, Sakura. Wu Ming looked at the two running away and shook his head helplessly. Really, you're still so lovey-dovey on the battlefield. However, Wu Ming smiled. Both of them had found a good home. Looking at the black mud followers that kept emerging from the black mud, Wu Ming opened his hands. Then let's begin, my followers. My followers, my servants. The time for war has come. So now, show your brave and fearless figure, for your master, for the king. Before the black mud had completely corroded the ground, the earth had already turned golden. 3-meter-tall steel golems walked up step by step, as if they were walking on a staircase. The iron golem that came up from the golden ground had a layer of faint golden light. That was the power of origin provided by Wuming. And those followers that emerged from the black mud had starlight that was as deep as the universe. That was the power of origin provided by the black mud. The power of origin had infinite changes, and there was no fixed form. Even Wuming, who was born from origin, couldn't clearly understand origin. Holy Grail, Holy Grail, Holy Grail. Countless black mud that couldn't be seen were like zombies, moving slowly in the direction of Wuming. These were the heroes that pursued the Holy Grail, but didn't end well. Now, they were eroded by the black mud and became abnormal. Bang! An iron fist hit the black mud follower at the front. The iron golems under Wuming's command were inanimate and unconscious magic products. The level of the iron golems was not very high. They could only be used as cannon fodder in many top battles, and they were only level 70. However, these iron golems had great magic resistance and physical armor. Although their attack power was not very good, they were quite good as meat shields and delay time. Moreover, Wuming's Origin Dragon's aura was added, so these iron golems had a resistance and restraining attribute against the black mud followers. It was just an armed fist, but with a body that was 3 meters tall. The impact of the fist was not weak, and with the restraining attribute given by silent sound, the black mud followers that were attacked by the iron golem were all emitting black smoke, and they were in great pain. However, as a mutual restraint, the black mud followers could also completely subdue these iron golems with the Origin Dragon's attributes. Just like divinity, in general, divinity often had the power to add damage to everything, but if it encountered a weapon or power that restrained divinity, then the guy with divinity would be unlucky. One by one, the black mud followers pounced on the iron golems, and their huge bodies brought poor flexibility. The iron golems fell to the ground and were divided by the black mud followers, turning into pure magic power and disappearing. The black mud followers and the iron golems began to fight. At present, it seemed that the iron golems were obviously at a disadvantage, and their foundation was a lot worse. Sure enough, these iron golems alone can't fight against the followers. Even these cracked followers are the same. Wuming said in a tone that was expected. However, it's enough to hold them back. Suddenly, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Wuming moved gently and dodged several noble phantoms. The noble phantoms fell to the ground, causing a violent explosion, and then turned into golden particles and disappeared. Wuming looked at the place where the noble phantoms were shot. Angelica stretched out a hand, and several golden ripples appeared on the gate of Babylon behind her. "We meet again, Hyunryong," Angelica said coldly. Wuming looked at Tong, Ing, and Bizet, who were being held back by several puppet-level card users, and Wei Gong Shiro, who was being held back by Beatrice. Then, Wuming looked at Angelica again. "You're going to be defeated by me, and you're lucky that you didn't die. Why? Do you still want to try your luck?" On the contrary, Angelica, who was usually emotionless, expressed her feelings this time. "I want to defeat you, Sensei." Angelica's originally emotionless eyes revealed a desire to fight. "I see. Are you seriously affected by Gilgamesh's card?" Wuming saw Angelica's current state. Gilgamesh was originally a top-level heroic spirit. Theoretically, even if he was eroded by the black soil, he should be able to maintain his consciousness and not disappear. However, the black soil was not ordinary black soil. It was black soil that was mixed with the root dragon's aura and had the power of the root. This caused the meaning of Gilgamesh's card that Angelica used to be basically clear. However, even if Gilgamesh had lost his consciousness, his power was not something that ordinary people could use. Angelica was subconsciously affected. Coupled with her previous experience of failure, It caused Angelica to be obsessed with Wooming. No matter how you look at it, it's your fault, Gil. Wooming looked at young Gil, who was standing at the side without moving. You can't blame me for this, Sensei. It's natural for the disciple to surpass the master. We've never fought before. It's understandable that my lower body wants to surpass you. If you want to blame someone, blame it on being my mentor, Sensei. Young Gil waved his hand and pushed the blame to Wooming. Wooming smiled. If that's the case, then I'll fight you as Hyunryong, Gilgamesh's mentor, Angelica. Chapter 295. Swish, swish, swish. Countless relics shot towards Wooming from Angelica's back. Boom, boom, boom. Wooming dodged the relics one after another as he moved towards Angelica. The relics behind Wooming exploded violently, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Young Jill, on the other hand, was watching the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica with interest from a high vantage point. Is he going to fight as Hyunryong's mentor? I remember that my mentor taught me about combat. Does this mean that my mentor is going to fight with my lower body as a warrior? Young Gil sat cross-legged on the platform with his hands supporting his chin. How nostalgic. Just as young Gil expected, Wooming, who was almost in front of Angelica, took out Yggdrasil from the golden ripples at the side. Tis. Angelica frowned and snorted unhappily. Subsequently, the golden ripples behind Angelica increased in number. Swish, swish, swish. However, Wooming, who had obtained the weapon, began to display his endless martial arts skills. Clang, 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 clang. Wooming controlled Yggdrasil and displayed the martial arts skills that he had learned from the Mirror Queen, Skaha. Countless relics that were shot towards Wooming were deflected. There was nothing fancy or beautiful about it. It was merely a display of martial arts skills to achieve a goal. There were not many fancy moves in the art of killing. The only goal was to kill the enemy. On the other hand, Wu Ming, who had bounced off countless relics, was getting closer to Angelica. Suddenly, a gap appeared in front of Wu Ming, who was moving forward. In an instant, Wu Ming was transported far away. After dodging a few relics, Wu Ming stood firm and looked at Angelica. In a sense, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really cheating. Wooming leaned on Yggdrasil and said helplessly, "Ha! I didn't say that I'm going to fight you as Gilgamesh mentor." Young Gil, who was in the sky, laughed heartily. Angelica did not agree, but did not refute either. "Well, you're right. It's on me this time." Wooming smiled. "Then, let's start the next round." Wooming's eyes suddenly became sharp. A few Lune runes appeared and wrapped around Wooming's body. Coming. In an instant, Wooming's speed became extremely fast and almost reached supersonic speed. Angelica continuously released a relic, but she could only hit Wooming's. If that's the case, Angelica opened two parallel spaces behind her, allowing countless relics to constantly move between the two spaces created by the displacement magic, making the relics in the Gate of Babylon accelerate without limit. In an instant, Angelica canceled the displacement magic, and countless relics burst out at supersonic speed toward Wooming. Clang, clang, clang. Although Wooming was hit, Wooming's reaction was still able to bounce them away. Yggdrasil. In an instant, Wooming performed primary release on Yggdrasil and threw it toward Angelica. The World Tree God's spear rubbed against the air and shot toward Angelica by leaps and bounds. Accompanied by a faint sound, the space in front and behind Angelica was replaced. Yggdrasil in primary release was just a holy spear with a fierce impact and vitality. It didn't have any extra attributes. Yggdrasil passed through the space and slammed into the ground, causing a violent explosion. The wind caused by the explosion blew Angelica's ponytails, making them flutter in the wind. "Your relic doesn't work, Hyunryong." Angelica still looked indifferent. "Then use the sword." That was Wooming, who had taken out X Silver from the golden ripple. X Silver. Wooming performed primary release on X Silver. In an instant, light gathered on the sword, and X Silver turned into a huge light sword. As Wu Ming uttered the true name, the lightsaber was violently swung out. The dazzling light rushed toward Angelica. Clang, 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 clang. Shields emerged from the gate of Babylon behind Angelica and fell to the ground. The shields were stacked on top of each other, forming a shield relic. Boom! The light cannon bombarded the shield, making a loud noise. Angelica dispersed the shield and looked at Wu Ming. "I've been waiting for you." Wu Ming suddenly got in through the gap between the scattered shields and raised the holy sword toward Angelica. Wu Ming used the light and sound of the light cannon as a cover, blocking Angelica's vision and hearing, sneaking in front of the shield, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Don't even think about it. Angelica was shocked, but fortunately, she was vigilant in advance and instantly used displacement magic again. Because the preparation was a bit hasty, this time displacement magic only replaced a small space. It only replaced the space at the tip of the meteor silver and the space behind Wu Ming. "But if it was me in the past, I might have fallen for it," Wu Ming suddenly said. Just as the meteor silver was about to enter the space, a golden ripple suddenly appeared in front of the meteor silver. As Wu Ming leaned forward, the entire meteor silver was swallowed by Wu Ming's space relic, Dragonist. Pata! Wu Ming's hands entered the space and came out from the space behind Wu Ming, hitting Wu Ming's back. Wu Ming smiled when he felt that he had punched himself. "It feels good to massage my own back." However, Wu Ming's weapon was gone. Angelica naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. "I didn't expect the famous master Hyunryong to make such a low-level mistake." As Angelica spoke to me, countless golden ripples surrounded Wu Ming and relics appeared one after another. "No, how could that be?" Wu Ming smiled. "I see. It's that move." Young Gil, who was sitting in the sky with his legs crossed, recalled something and said with interest. Since young Gil had already recalled it, it didn't make sense that Angelica, who was subconsciously influenced by Gilgamesh, didn't notice the lower half of young Gil's body. Angelica looked at Wu Ming's smile and felt a strong sense of uneasiness. "It seems like Gilgamesh's card power has sensed something," Wu Ming said, but he didn't let go of his hand. Wu Ming clenched his fist, and countless vines broke out from the ground and entangled Angelica. Yggdrasil, who was not far behind Angelica, had already activated his relic and was ready for battle. Swoosh! The sound of chains was heard, and a few golden chains entangled Angelica, sealing her magical power. In just a few breaths, Hyunryong had subdued his disciple, the Hero King. Chapter 296. Here you go, Angelica. With that said, Wu Ming put his hand on Angelica's stomach. Wu Ming exerted force, and Angelica's whole body glowed. Ah! The pain of being stripped of her class card made Angelica moan. When the light dissipated, Angelica, who was bound by enkidu and vines, changed her clothes into a set of home clothes. And Wu Ming had an extra card in his hand. Archer, Archer. Wu Ming read the name on the class card. This class card was Gilgamesh's upper body. Wu Ming threw it behind him indifferently, and a small hand caught the card. The owner of the hand was young Gil, who had already come down from the floating platform in the sky. "You've really helped me a lot, teacher." Young Gil looked at the class card in his hand happily. "Okay, I found your upper body for you. Be a good audience and watch this farce." Wu Ming knew his disciple well. Once he regained his real body, it was hard to say what would happen. Yes, I didn't want to participate this time. I'm still very interested in the comedy between teacher and clowns. You have a bad taste. Wu Ming raised his eyebrows. By the way, what are you going to do with this woman? Young Gil pointed at Angelica with interest. In this regard, Wu Ming fell into silence. On the other side, Shiro Amiya and Beatrice. Don't run, come and fight with me. Beatrice was like a psychopath, madly roaring at Shiro Amiya, laughing, and constantly smashing Mjolnir in her hand at Shiro Amiya. "I'm sorry, but I know my limits. If I'm hit by this hammer, I'll be finished." Shiro Amiya jumped, dodging the incoming giant hammer and the surging lightning on the giant hammer. Hee-ha-ha! Then why don't you just obediently die? However, Beatrice did not care about Shiro Amiya at all. She just kept attacking Shiro Amiya. TSK, this power isn't something that a simple person can possess. Wei Gongshirling once again dodged a lightning strike by a hair's breadth and said while panting heavily. However, the user is a berserker. Beatrice was now like a berserker. She laughed wildly and controlled the Mjolnir in her hand to attack crazily. If that's the case, then I'll kill him in one strike. Instantly, Shiro Amiya's eyes turned cold. Race on, projection begin. Shiro Amiya's feet suddenly stopped, and he quickly turned and ran toward Beatrice. You finally stopped running? Then go to hell. Beatrice looked at Shiro Amiya, laughed, raised the Mjolnir, and began to charge. Immediately, Shiro Amiya waved his hand, and blue lines lit up on his body. Several noble phantoms appeared out of thin air and shot toward Beatrice. It's completely useless. Beatrice smirked as she swung the Mjolnir that was still charged with electricity down on the ground. Several noble phantoms made by Shiro Amiya were directly smashed and disappeared. Race on, projection begin. In an instant, Wei Gongshiro raised one of his hands, and a gigantic sword that was as tall as the heavens and the earth was projected. Is it a Galma? Beatrice recognized the huge weapon at a glance. Beatrice once saw in Angelica's treasure house. That weapon was one of the two swords held by Zabarba, the god of war in Mesopotamia. It was a noble phantasm called Igiolima, the green horizon of 1,000 mountains. There's one in Angelica's treasury as well. But it seems like yours is just a fake that imitates its appearance. Beatrice did not retreat, but went forward and slammed the Mjolnir in her hand on the fake Igalama. Boom! Crack! Igalama and Mjolnir collided with each other, and with a cracking sound, Igalama was directly smashed by Mjolnir. Ha, it's great. That's great. Beatrice laughed maniacally as she stood on the mountain-slicing sword that was stabbed into the ground. Beatrice, who was laughing, suddenly found that Shiro Amiya was gone. Are you going to play hide-and-seek this time? Beatrice said with a smile. It's the mouse that eats the cat. Shiro Amiya's voice came from behind Beatrice. Beatrice turned her head and saw Shiro Amiya holding a black bow with a strange spiral arrow on it. The moment Beatrice turned her head, Shiro Amiya let go of the bowstring. Boom! The spiral sword exploded, and the flame buried Beatrice. The wind set off by the explosion blew Shiro Amiya's robe. It seemed that Beatrice had disappeared in the flame. However, Shiro Amiya did not let down his guard. Very good. That's it. Resist, and then be crushed under my feet. Beatrice rushed out of the flame, shouting excitedly, and her expression became more and more ferocious. Beatrice rushed directly to Shiro Amiya. Row Ajax, blazing 7 circles. Shiro Amiya opened the cherry blossom shield with one hand, blocking Beatrice's hammer attack. Although it seemed that the injury was not light, Beatrice became more and more courageous. She chased after Shiro Amiya and hit him all the way. Each petal was as thick as an ancient city wall. 7 petals. Looking at the rapidly decreasing petals, Shiro Amiya sighed again. You're really a berserker. You're really as difficult to deal with as a cockroach. You're the same. You're as difficult to deal with as a mouse. Although Beatrice said that, she did not stop her actions. Her Mjolnir kept hammering the 7 blazing rings, Row Ajax, madly. Boom! The last petal broke, and the cherry blossom shield in Shiro Amiya's hand was broken. Die! Beatrice's eyes flashed fiercely, and the lightning on Mjolnir suddenly exploded, carrying out a fatal blow. However, Shiro Amiya only projected a pair of black and white dual swords. Crane Wings Fall No, Mind Skill Mount Tai, Mind Skill Crossing the Yellow River, Mind Skill Receiving Heaven. 2 heroes share the same fate. The dual swords that were less than a meter long changed shape and became a pair of black and white dual swords that were more than a meter long like two wings. A few red lights flashed in the smoke behind Beatrice. Random, triple-linked crane wings triple combo. Slash. The sound of the blade cutting through flesh was heard. Two pairs of ferocious wing blades, together with the pair of long swords in Shiro Amiya's hands, cut through Beatrice's body. Shiro Amiya used the smoke and flames of the explosion produced by the spiraling sword to hide the other two pairs of moy swords. When Beatrice was focused on Shiro Amiya and thought that she had won, he launched a sneak attack from behind and successfully took down Beatrice. Shiro Amiya's dual swords were on the neck of Beatrice, who was paralyzed on the ground and could not stand up, and said condescendingly, "Now you're a general, berserker. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."